someone came to me on Rikers, came to visit me and was like, yo, it's time for you to get on the set, and let me know, like, this is a real lifestyle. This is not something to play with, right? So I didn't know what I was getting into until OG was like, hey man, y'all young bucks, get ready for Gladiator school. I had to either figure out who I was gonna be. Was I gonna be a sheep and be slaughtered, or I was gonna be a wolf and try to survive?
What's up, everybody? I'm here in New York City today interviewing Vidal Guzman. Vidal is a former blood gang member from Harlem who spent years on Rikers Island, in and out of jail, and then upstate in prison. He's here to tell us about the horrible conditions on Rikers Island, how he survived it, and how today he is fighting to get that jail closed down. This is a wild story, you guys. We've talked to guards on Rikers before, but this will be the first time interviewing a former inmate on that infamous island. And of course, if you want to hear bonus content with Vidal, go over to patreon.com/theknack show. Without further ado, I give you Vidal Guzman right here on The Connect with Johnny Mitchell.
And I seen somebody else that I knew and started hanging out with them. They closed the visiting floor down and told all of us to leave. I found out that he went into the bathroom and they started cutting him up. Crips taking turns with his face. I woke up with nightmares. No matter how tough you are, like, there's a point of fear or a point where you just put the fear all in your gut and just do what you need to do, right?
That's when I see the lights behind me start to flash. And I didn't even think, I just hit it. I was driving like my life depended on it. Then I parked the car, hopped out, closed the door, and I started running.
And he pulls out a burner, a shank, it's like 6 inches. And he passes it to me. And he goes, here, that's yours. Don't ever leave the cell block without this. He was the reason I made it out of that place alive.
Vidal, thank you so much for being here, brother.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate you.
Of course. Now, tell us, before we get into your story, what's going on with Rikers now? What's the status of it being closed?
Yeah, right now there's a law that exists that Rikers Island has to be closed by 2027, and the population at least has to be by 3,000, and the population is at least 6,000 right now. Things jumping to turnstile, shoplifting.
Yeah.
So right now, even as all this is happening, there are people who are dying on Rikers.
Hang on. So, by 2027, all of the Rikers jails
on the island, so the
need to be closed.
Yeah, so the city's supposed to go to 12 to 4 jails, and there's already 3 existing jails close to the courtroom, and just 1 new jail that's supposed to be built. But the city, that means that this city will be the biggest city in the country with the less populated people who are incarcerated.
I see. And explain that too, because that's an interesting thing I didn't know before watching your story.
Mm-hmm.
Rikers, the detention center, is not just the jails on the island.
Yeah,
it's a whole archipelago of jails.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what there are existing facilities in Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, but not Staten Island. So majority of times, or not even in Queens. Queens is not running right now, but let's say if someone gets booked, and they're 19 years old, they'll go to the Manhattan Detention Center. What happens is that someone would await into Rikers Island has beds opened up, right? So like, sometimes you might be waiting in the Manhattan Detention Center for a month and a half until they're ready to ship you to Rikers Island.
Right.
So you're literally still at Rikers, but in Manhattan. And
I see. So you're part of the Rikers system, even though you're not on the island. Gotcha. So, but the island by 2027, that's a for sure thing. It's got to be closed.
It is a city council member. It's a city law that is supposed to be closed by 2027. And what happens is that the city will start getting, some issues will start happening, but city council is supposed to stay on top of that. And that has been multiple organizations directly impacted. People like myself who've been in survived Rikers has been on top of that to make sure that city council and the city is following that Rikers Island should be and must be closed by 2027. But yeah.
Is there any resistance to that by, people that want to see more people incarcerated or a different political party that might want more people locked up? Because, right now there's been a pushback, right?
A lot of pushback, yeah.
There was the Giuliani era, the wild 70s and 80s of New York when crime was out of control, when we did need more police. The Giuliani era came, and of course, like anything American, way overdid it, right? Too many people locked up, Rockefeller laws, all of those unjust, draconian drug laws, right? And then now it's kind of swung back to where you see, huge rise in shoplifting and petty crime. So I'm just curious, and all you hear about, like especially in the New York Post, all we hear about is how easy it is for people to get bail.
Yeah.
How easy it is for people to get out of jail. So do you foresee when 2027 does come around, do you think maybe it won't be closed?
I think it will be closed, but first, when people get bailed out, that is the judge's power to release someone, right? Like the goal of the bail reform, it was once called the Khalif Browder Speedy Trial Discovery Law and bail reform, right? Those are the three issues that was keeping people on Rikers. We heard of people being on Rikers for 10 years awaiting trial. Can you imagine 10 years? 10 years, and you thinking that trial is gonna start. Let's say your trial was you was trial ready, right? And what the DA or a DA would tell the judge and say, you know what, we're not ready for trial. I got a dentist appointment. It used to be like that, or we're not ready for trial. Like they will keep pushing the case into you have felt the wrath of Rikers Island and copped out yourself.
That's right. It's a tactic.
It's always a tactic. Even, I just seen the rapper D-Thing just come home and he explained about Rico and explains about other people talking about people will keep you there. They will have you, DAs and people in power would keep you there until you experience Rikers and you're I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm copping out. What you say you have for me again, talk to, my lawyer, and they just cop out.
Yeah, they put their hand up saying, I'm done. I can't take the conditions in here.
But in New York had a close to 98 percentage that someone will cop out. Because what happens is that the DA can retain or hold evidence until trial actually starts. So you don't even know what they actually have against you.
Yeah.
So a lot of times because I was in there, when I was 16, 17, I seen kids take their case to trial and, come back and get life, right?
Yeah.
And they thought I thought they didn't have any evidence, or I was innocent, right?
I don't know how is that possible? That's called discovery. That seems like the most basic constitutional right.
It is, but we didn't have discovery, right? So majority of the time, DAs will give the evidence to the lawyer of the defendant at the end of the case, right? Or when trial, let me correct that, when trial is booming, right?
Is that a New York state law?
It was
that allows DAs to do that?
It was at one point, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, a lot of other states might do it similar, right? And then the bail reform, the bail issue was a real issue, right? People have to put down their houses. When someone's talking, your bail can be 50,000, right? Yeah. Who in our urban community has 50,000 to play with, right?
And sitting on the island for 10 years fighting your case, I mean, who's doing that? People that have murder cases?
Yeah, some people who have murder cases.
Did you see anybody sit on Rikers for years and then actually beat their case?
Yeah, I actually did see someone beat their case. We actually went to the same program called the Get Out, Stay Out program. He was in there. I could talk a little briefly about him and his co-defenders got in this situation in Queens where they, took a body, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't have any way to be a part of that, right? He was just around. From my knowledge, that's what's said to me. And this guy got his high school diploma, his GED, and he was in there for years. That's one of the guys that I've seen that was in there 8 to 10 years. And then
so think about that. A decade of your life is gone, but you just beat your case. So you were sitting there as an innocent man. Because when you go to trial and win, you are innocent. So therefore, you've been innocent this whole time.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to be presumed innocent, not the other way around. But the reality is, it's the complete presumption of guilt.
Yeah. But imagine me being 16, being locked up with that person and then getting reincarcerated at 19 and seeing I'm still there.
Yeah.
That's scary.
That's crazy.
And that is very scary.
So let's talk about that because your story is wild. your Dominican background.
Yeah. So yeah. And
Tell
a
us
whole bunch of
tell
other
us
different
about
things.
it. Yeah.
So I'm Dominican, Salvadorian, and I'm West African.
Okay.
So I grew up in a Dominican household.
Your parents are from the island?
Yeah, they're from the island. My mom's is like, you remember these routes. She took the route to come in this country through Puerto Rico, Mexico, stayed in Mexico for a while, and then came to New York and said, I'm gonna see what I'm gonna try to do. She looked for her American dream, right? And my mom's was a very hardworking woman. She survived the Trujillo, dictator Trujillo, who killed so many Haitians in Dominican Republic. And as a lot of us still know that the Dominicans and the Haitian problems is still ongoing now. So when she came here, most of our family came here too, but they, a lot of Latinx family, especially my family, when they came here, they was looking for opportunity and didn't get it, right? So what happens when you're trying to provide, right? You get in these drug-infested areas, you figure out how to manangle or how to figure out how to survive.
Did you have family from the Dominican who got involved in the crack game back in the 80s when it was booming?
Heavy 90s, yeah, and majority of all my uncles got deported too. So literally it was, for them, it was like, yo, there's no opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And when you're hearing that, you grow up hearing stories of your uncle selling in Hunts Point and, trying to make ends meet.
Well, that was a real option for Dominican immigrants back then, was they would hear on the island, hey, you can come work a corner. There's this thing called crack. You could just stand on a corner for a guy looking out and he'll pay you $100 a day.
Oh, yeah.
And back in 1988, what is $100 in the Dominican Republic? That's like a 6-month salary.
A lot.
Did any of them become kingpins or junior kingpins? Did any of them have success, or were they just street guys?
They're just street guys, but these guys, they were able to, my uncles was able to take care of themselves in DR, right? Position themselves to take care of their family, open businesses up. And
from the drug money they made in New York.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Good on them.
I mean, they knew, I think when you get in that game, what's the end goal, right? They knew they was gonna get locked up, right? I think, when I have conversations with my uncles, right, they knew that, hey man, we don't got an opportunity. This is what we got to do, and we're gonna get probably locked up, So it's well, let's do what we do, right?
So in the meantime, they were just sending money back.
But one of my uncles did get actually locked up, and actually came back in with a different name and everything.
Those are the good old days when you could do that.
But he did that recently, right?
Really?
A couple years ago, and he finally got caught up because somebody else snitched on him and reported that he was in the state. Yeah.
So what about your father? Was he in the picture?
Nah, my father wasn't in the picture. I met my father when he was 18. He was like this Ecuadorian hardworking man.
What do you mean you met your father when he was 18?
I met him when he was 18. I didn't know. I didn't know who he was.
When you were 18?
Yeah, when I was 18.
Oh, okay. I'm like, damn, that'd be wild.
Yeah. So I met him when I was 18, and I was at that time trying to figure out, I had a stepfather, and my stepfather was around that, the drug space too, right? So I was just trying to figure out who was my real father. So I met my father at 18 years old. I just came home from Rikers, right? And when I met him, the story about him was he's this hardworking man. He works hard. So my mom's really fell in love with him because he was a hardworking man. But he knew there was a different lifestyle that my mom's and, my uncles was living through, right? And he wasn't a part of that. He had that opportunity to find that job and work hard. But yeah, I met my pops when he was 18. I was raised by my stepfather in a Rastafarian and Dominican household. And he was a part of the Harlem, Alpo, and being around those areas and understanding this is how I operate, right?
Interesting. So it sounds like he was somewhat of an influence in your criminal activity or your criminal upbringing, let's say.
Somewhat. I think for me was my brother, right? Because I was more involved in my brother's life. My brother's 10 years older than me. He came home a couple years ago. He did 16 years. And he wasn't born here. He was basically came here. And at that time, I was homeless, right? And, at one moment for my mom's to get her life together, she was just trying to figure stuff out. Her coming to America, she, that means she had to have me with her. And some days I would ask her like, yo, can we get some pizza? She didn't have the money for that, and we was living at other people's houses, family house, getting mistreated.
Yeah.
And when my brother moved, we was living in Washington Heights. He moved with us to Washington Heights and seeing the lifestyle we was living. He did not like that.
Yeah.
This guy, my brother was a good soccer player. Like he had, this ability to be someone.
Yeah.
But then he's seen the drug life. The DDPs was around that, the DDP was around that space.
And they became the DDP, what is
Dominicans
it?
don't play.
Dominicans don't play. That became the Trinitarios, the Trinitarios.
When they all switched.
Right.
When they went into Rikers or other facilities and stuff like that.
And then your brother became involved with, and he became a Trinitario.
Yeah. At the end of his, when he was incarcerated. So,
can you tell us about the Trinitarios? They're notorious.
Yeah, they are. And I think when you think about their history is where they got their name from, the Patria, right? The Patria was one of the first founders of Dominican Republic, right? So at that time, they were the founding fathers of Dominican Republic, fighting against Haiti. And, because at one time Haiti had Dominicans enslaved, right? So for Patria was, before it was used, or Trinitarios, Patria was one of the, that's what they call the founding fathers, right? And for me, I didn't hear about the Trinitarios or the Patrias until I got locked up and I was 16, right?
Right. So is that true that the DDP became the Trinitarios in Rikers?
Yeah, I mean, they all switched. It was a war, you know what I'm saying?
Against who? A war against who?
DDP and the Trinitarios, right? What the story is that, and this is my experience, what I kind of, because I was hearing those stories and I was Dominican, so I was always hearing about how, the upcoming or what happened. So in Rikers Island, when DDPs went into Rikers, they changed their name. They're Patria Trinitario, right? Yeah. And what happened was, the story that was told to me was like, someone took the Patria name out to the public and said, you know what, we're not jacking DDP with this. And all-out war started happening.
Between who, though?
DDPs and the Trinitarios.
Okay. And it sounds like the Trinitarios won.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's no DDP anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there was this brutal machete killing that everybody saw a couple of years ago, uptown in the Bronx,
last name as mine, Guzman.
Yeah, real up. It was a mistaken identity. They chased this kid into a bodega and they just hacked him to death. And these are kids. These are not. These are not Americans. These were Dominicans, like from the island, didn't speak any English. Anyways, they all went away. But the Trinitarios, what is their presence today and how do they operate? Are they involved with the uptown drug trade or is it just a prison operation?
I mean, they are operated outside in the public, right? Yeah. Like, there have been a couple of RICO laws that, RICOs have been used in New York a lot now, and they're taking down local crews, right? So the RICO law has always been used against the Trinitarios in Washington Heights. And then after, what happened to, an individual named Guzman, when he was killed, a lot of other things happened after that. The RICO law was used against them, right? To take down some of their leadership. But yeah, they are not just a prison or jail operated, group, but they exist out in the public, right?
Right. So, but do they take orders like the way the Mexican mafia actually is based inside of prison and they give orders to the street? Do the Trinitarios function the same way? Do orders start in Rikers and then go to the street? Or
it varies, right? Because the thing about it is, and this is when I start talking about the Bloods, right? Like the Bloods, there is leadership outside, but also is leadership inside,
Okay.
Right. So like every single gang might have leadership inside that might be the top caller, you know what I'm saying? And they might have leadership outside. Right. So, it's similar to every gang, right? Like if they're a presence that exists, they always have leadership inside and outside. Right.
This episode is sponsored by Scentbird. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription that lets you choose a new designer fragrance every month for just $17. You don't have to invest a lot of money on designer fragrances if you try Scentbird. Scentbird offers affordable and flexible subscription plans. You can also skip or cancel your subscription at any time, making it a hassle-free experience. Here's how it works. Every month, you get to pick what you want to receive so there are no surprises. They have over 600 perfumes and colognes and a lot of unisex options. They carry such brands as Gucci, Prada, and Versace, as well as indie labels like Skylar, Heretic, and Confessions of Rebel. You can be sure that you're getting a premium scent every month. With each fragrance, you'll get a 30-day supply so you can try out fragrances before committing to a full-size bottle that can cost over $150 and sometimes even $300 to $500. I love this idea, a subscription for your colognes and perfumes. For years, I didn't wear fragrance because I never wanted to spend $300 on a bottle of the same scent. You're kind of taking a risk, right? It's way more than you need and that you want to spend. You get rid of all that when you use Scentbird. For just $17 a month, you get perfume or cologne that looks like this. They come in really cool, different bottles. This is how it works. You just pop it open and you see right there, that's a really good amount of cologne. Just put it back in the bottle like that. See, you've got that adjustable bar right there. You just click it to the side and now you're ready to spray. This month, I had 3 fragrances sent to me. This one is called French Defense. I really like this one. It's got like a cedar wood, kind of cherry, oaky flavor to it. This is a very like masculine fragrance. This one is called Sugar Leather. This is a little bit sweeter. It's got cinnamon, hints of caramel in it. Really nice, kind of a spicier fragrance. And finally, this one is called Cross River Gorilla. I really like this one. It's got a fruitier tinge to it. It's got green apple, hints of smoked leather, and violet leaf. It's got a really rustic smell to it. Really, really nice, not overpowering. Definitely like a summertime scent to it. So as you can see, I've got 3 different fragrances for different occasions. And right now, Scentbird is offering you an amazing deal, 55% off your first month when you use promo code CONNECT. That comes out to about $7 a month. Once again, that's promo code CONNECT at scentbird.com.
So what was your brother's function in the Trinitarios?
He was just living. He was a part of this gang. When he was incarcerated, he was part of this gang. And I'm talking about at the end of his bid, because in the beginning of his bid, he was sliced a couple times. He was going through it.
What did he get locked up for?
He got locked up for attempt murder. Okay. Right. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it, because his attempt murder, the people, the person that he tried to defend himself against, right? Like someone, my brother's a hustler, right? And in the Harlem area that we live at, it's not too many Dominicans. And he was out there selling like haze, right? Weed, and no one at that time, this is early 2000s.
The Dominicans had the haze.
Yeah.
You guys had the best weed.
Nobody was selling haze where we was at, 8th Avenue, 7th Avenue, So for him, he was setting up shop, hooking people up in the neighborhood, getting people to sell some haze. He was getting people to hustle for him. But someone tried to rob him for his Jesus chain and around the corner from us. And, he fought the guy back, but he came back and, he went back to our block and talked to somebody to get a gun. Because he's like, I can't be seen me selling drugs and somebody just try to take my Jesus chain around the corner. So, he seen him and shot him. My brother was on a run for weeks, even months. The detectives would come in our house every single day and harass us. Tell my moms like, yo, if you don't tell us where your son is at now, we're going to send you to Dominican Republic. Telling my stepfather at the time, harassing him, really to the point where this wasn't policing every single time. So while I was getting ready to go to school, like I will kind of hear that. Detectives will really come in our apartment, be aggressive. But this is not. My brother used to run out every time they used to knock on the door out the fire escape.
Dude, like we're in like the 1940s, like escaping out the back.
You gotta
down the classic New York fire escape.
But hear this out: the guy that he shot was also an active blood member.
Okay.
So for him, it a lot of things played in role, right? Like,
so he eventually gets locked up, and that's what he goes away for 16 years for?
he gets locked up. He takes such a trial, think that he's gonna beat the case because the guy's blood, and he's not gonna snitch. I didn't go like that.
Oh, the guy went and told?
On the stand.
Oh my God.
Literally on the stand.
A blood gang member is testifying.
On the stand. And to this day, he's still blood.
He's still out in the street.
He's still blood.
And like that's how New York has changed. That guy would have been touched up. He couldn't live, back in the 80s, he would be gone. But now they're letting him. It's crazy.
The thing about it's paperwork. You need the paperwork to prove something like that, right? If you're saying someone's snitching without any paperwork, that person could have probably built so much status, gang status, that it's hard to challenge their position.
Oh,
you get what I'm saying?
So do you think high-level blood and Crip, Trinitario, whoever, high-level gang members are also cooperating?
I don't know about that. I won't be able to answer that, but somebody knows something, right?
So tell me then, your brother goes away, takes it, blows trial, gets locked up, long bid.
Yeah.
I assume now you're the man of the house at a young age.
My stepfather started selling, my stepfather was selling, my brother was selling, and was selling
haze or crack?
Crack, everything. And for me being, at that time, I was like 10 years old, 11 years old, and I was like seeing all that, right? And, I was already active. I was being a watch out kid around my neighborhood. So
Really?
I was already in that space with my older brother, right? Like I was always with him all the time and seeing him do things. Or, I come in and see him, like bagging up, so I was already in that lifestyle, seeing things, right?
How did your stepfather, how did he hustle crack like in the 2000s? Is he working off his phone, or did they still have like a bodega spot?
Spot. He'll work at bodegas. Wow. He'll work, even from, I think it was dangerous even from the apartment. Like I think he was bugged out. And it was rough because my stepfather was also Army vet, right? Like he was discharged. And his father served in the Vietnam. So like, it's like this. Wow. It's like my family had, I'll tell you, my brother was a soccer player. You get what I'm saying? So like everybody has something going on for themselves, and like circumstances change it. And like I seeing my father, he was just trying to provide, man. And when he my mom's was trying to move people away from the drugs, screaming at people, stop this, leave this all alone. Cause I get it, man. Like, my mom's was in and, going in and out, seeing family members in the feds, on Rikers. Like,
and
she was,
and mothers of incarcerated families, they know the system as much as like a trial lawyer that's been doing it 30 years, because they're the ones that know the rules going into visiting, and they're the ones who, collaborate with lawyers, read paperwork, discovery paperwork. They really are like, go through it almost as much as, their loved ones who are locked up. Yeah. Now, why did you join the Bloods? And tell us about the New York Bloods. What is going on here? That's our thing, man. That's in LA. That's a Cali thing, Bloods and Crips. How do Bloods and Crips work in New York City?
Yeah, before I even got into the Bloods, I was a part of a local crew called the Hood Vikings. And like, I don't think New York is a lot different than the West Coast, right? Like right now, we might operate how Chicago operate with local crews, right? Like local crews, they might not be connected to national organizations like the Bloods, Crips, GD, but they might have control from one block, right? So I grew up where, when I started stepping out into the streets more, like being with friends, rivalry happens, right? Like simple things. You can come from school and home and get in a fight with a different neighborhood, right? What people didn't understand, Harlem has so many gangs, right? And like local crews. And these kids was like 10 to 20 years old.
Wow.
So these crews might be Bloods and Crips, but you know, this is what they call themselves. Too deep. So it might be in New York, it might be different than California because they might be something called double jacking. So basically, they might be a crew and they might be Blood.
So you could do that. You
cannot do that, but they were. That's how New York was a lot different than how California is, right?
So did your crew also have its own name?
Yeah,
and be part of the Bloods?
No, we wasn't. We was just Hood Vikings. This was like we were just 1 block radius between 145th, between 7th and 8th. But we started because, you know, like certain other neighborhoods would come into your neighborhood and try to violate, right? And protecting ourselves, we knew we only had ourselves, right? Like we was from this block, we had to protect ourselves. And at that moment, we had blood leaders around us. But what people didn't understand is that at the time, there was just a whole bunch of crews. So Drew Ham had the 2 Deep Mafia. Polo Grounds had TBO, the Best Out. And like the Best Out was known for taking cops' guns off their belts.
Wow.
Literally.
Yeah.
And, you know, 40 Wolves, right, on 40th Street. You know, Saint Nick, It Up.
That's the name of the crew? That's rock and roll. It sounds like when you actually go to Rikers and get locked up, that's when you become more of this cohesive Blood. You're under the Blood umbrella. Am I right?
No, so I didn't become Blood until I was 19 years old. Bloods was around me. But the thing about it is, when I was 16, 17, like, there's this switch that happened, right? Like a lot of local crews, individuals, when they get locked up, they might join gangs, right? So I never joined the Bloods until I came home when I was 18 years old. I was almost recruited when I was 16 years old. When someone came to me on Rikers, you know, came to visit me and was like, "Yo, it's time for you to get on the set."
Really?
Yeah.
So what and they wear red like West Coast Bloods and claim blood and call each other, "What's up, Blood?"
Yeah, I mean,
the same kind of lingo?
When the Bloods first came to the East Coast, it came in the early 1990s, OG Mac, and United Blood Nation, right? Like that was the umbrella that, you know, a lot of sets when it was launching that was under, right? Like OG Mac was one of the individuals who was credited to bringing the Bloods to the East Coast.
Was he from the West Coast?
From the history that was said, and this is the leadership of Bloods, that he has some connection to the West Coast, and they gave him the green light to have his own set, and he took it to the East Coast. Wow. That conversation alone is a conversation that a lot of people who've been in the Blood culture has always spoke about that, right? Wow. So a lot of times, you know, gangs, you know, the Bloods in sets started increasing. But when the Bloods first started in the 1990s in Rikers, you know, majority started because of, you know, the Latinos, right?
Right. So there's Latino Bloods, obviously.
No. I mean, obviously right now, but in the early 1990s, you had the Nietas and the Lion Kings, right? They was controlling everything. Of course.
What about on the streets today? What about Crips? Is there a big Crip organization in New York?
There is. There's always Bloods and Crips, right? But because of New York's Operation Crew Cut, it became very hard for people to flag, right? Or you will put an arrow on yourself. What people don't understand is that New York, the NYPD uses social media to watch people. So they're basically breaking Fourth Amendment all the time, right? You know, you're not supposed to have this watching someone, and they're basically watching people and waiting for them to actually do something. So for us, like, you don't see people flagging like that because they know, like, if I'm flagging, that means I'm putting a target on myself, right?
Are there gang enhancements that they can apply to you if you get caught doing a crime?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even if you're a part of a certain crew, when they do RICO laws, they can take your whole neighborhood down.
Right. They can say, okay, you guys called yourselves up. So we put a case on everybody involved with crack selling in
Honest selling. Yep. Literally, and just wait for someone to snitch.
Does the paperwork, do you think the judge is reading up out loud?
Yeah, they are.
That's hilarious.
But it's scary because like majority of the, I'm 33, I'm about to be 33 in 2 months. And majority of the people I grew up with was caught in RICO law.
Because they were part of crews. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about your crew and what led to your first case going to Rikers.
Yeah. I mean, when I got the name from one of my friends. Like I noticed that my neighborhood was having beef with other neighborhoods, and we was just like coming home from school getting jumped. We was like, yo, we gotta do something, man. We gotta walk together. We gotta connect together. And for me, I took the name. I went to middle school and high school, and I started recruiting other individuals to join the crew, right? Because that meant that I was able to go different places in Harlem. What people don't understand, when you are active, when your neighborhood is an active, like, gangs are operating, you gotta know where to walk, where to not walk, right? So for me, like when I started recruiting people, we met people from Lincoln Projects, Manhattanville. So I was able to go to all these housing complex or able to, go to different neighborhoods. But for me, like, I think the first thing that I got into is robbing, right? Like I was a robber. I was trying to figure out, I was trying to provide for myself, right? Like I started seeing people having more nicer stuff than me and seeing my mom struggle. It was just hard, man. Like you trying to tell her to buy you a Mermart jacket. Mermart jacket was very big, and you see people still wearing them. And I was like, Mom, yo, can you give me a Mermart jacket? $500, that's like half my rent.
Yeah.
And it was
your stepdad wasn't making enough from crack
it's not
sales?
even that. He was, but at the end of the day, it was like that coat was also a target. So like you'll have this Mermart jacket and get robbed or killed for it.
Right.
Like in New York, that is a huge thing. Like this Mermart jacket, they call it the Biggie season.
Right.
And like, for a lot of times, people wore these jackets as a fashion to show people, I'm in tune. I'm a part of this.
It's what like Nautica jackets were back in the 90s.
There you go. Yeah,
my buddy has a joke because he grew up in Brooklyn. He's a stand-up comic. He goes, back in my day, if you had a Nautica jacket and some kids saw you, well, you had a Nautica jacket.
No, that's seriously, that's really
so Mermart jackets were what you could get stuck for. So you're packing a pistol now, and that's really common for street kids in New York. Is like you start out just being a jack boy.
We was a bunch of kids just hanging out, but we started getting into trouble, right? Like somebody might look at us different, right? And get in a fight, right? And you might get in a fight and just take something from them. That's robbery. Literally. Like if police grab you up and say you just took something from them, that's robbery. No matter what, the headphones, any of that.
Yeah, strong arm robbery, they call it. So did you move up to like being a jack boy? Like actually like, robbing people at gunpoint or at knife point?
That was my thing.
This doesn't sound very bad.
It doesn't. I'm not a bad guy.
It just sounds like you were, it sounds like pretty run-of-the-mill hood. It sounds like stuff I used to, I would never like strong arm rob people, but like, getting in fights and beefs, it's kind of normal boy behavior.
It was normal things, right? Like, and I think for me, like but my story is like many different people, right? Like it's like
you're a problem. You're a bully.
Yeah, but I was the bad apple in my neighborhood, and the more I started getting more into violence, we started getting into beefs in other neighborhoods.
So now you've organized a crew, and you're beefing with different crews.
Oh yeah, now we're robbing them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like that was like, and some of those beefs, like. With my brother, when he had the situation and the guy snitched on him, he was from a housing complex right next to us. And we will be beefing for years. Like shooting at each other. Like,
Did you get in shootouts with other crews?
Oh, yeah. Like that.
Wow.
If you've never been in that situation, like it's a split second where you got to decide either you're going to duck or you're running. And what are you ducking behind? So for me, like those shootouts was real and it was scary, right? And it let me know like this is a real lifestyle. This is not something to play with, right?
So now you're not fighting with fists anymore.
Oh no!
It's
Like
getting
if
real.
you get fist fights, you're lucky, right? But then it's like, you know, I had to.
So they just come on your block and start shooting?
Yeah. It gets like that because we're literally a block away from each other. So this is like stories that a lot of different people in New York deal with, right? You know, there's Bloods and Crips still around, but these are local crews who like are having problems a block away from each other.
Neighbors.
Neighbors.
Beefing with neighbors.
Literally every single day it'll be a fight or, you know what I'm saying, like
Or
shootouts.
Did any of your crew get shot?
Nah, none of us.
Yeah, you guys can't shoot for man, thank God. Thank
That's
God.
what I
That
say
keeps
too.
the murder rate down, shooting sideways.
But they'll be like, they'll shoot in the air and we'll like not run. Like we'll just say like, okay, you know, a lot of times I knew like guys I was growing up, we were scared, right? Like, and you know, when Operation Crew Cut started being more active, you know, like I wanted, you know, when I was 19 years old, I started being, you know, I was locked up again at 19 years old. That's when I exactly knew that the DA and the police was watching us more, right? Because for me, like I already knew that they was watching us because of, you know, they throw us on the wall and check to see if we ever had guns on us. And for me, like 15, 16, 17, and 18, and 19 was like hectic years for me, being very young, being a youth in New York, because at 15, 14 years old, our neighborhood was a hot spot, right? So that means cops, DA, like D's will, you know, detectives will jump on us, you know what I'm saying, throw us on a wall.
Undercovers?
Undercover. And mind you, you know, when you're beefing with people, you're seeing people jump up. The first thing you're doing is running, right? Like out the car. But then you seeing they're white, you're like, okay, that's detectives. Let's just go on the wall, bro. And
so there's no rights though. If they say get on the wall, you could be walking home from
get
school.
on the wall.
There's no like probable cause that they need.
Nope.
And that's stop and frisk in
Stop
New
and
York.
frisk, you know, and when that happened, literally we would just get on the wall. So that means these are grown men, you know, probably 200 pounds and 6'3", throwing us on the wall. And I was like 5'4", 120 pounds.
How many times do you think lifetime you were made to get on the wall and be patted down? Can you even count them?
In 1 week, I got thrown on the wall for like 7 times.
Oh my God.
7 times.
Did they find anything?
No. 7 times. And I was 15 years old. And the way that they, you know, like.
And they're not nice about it, I don't think.
They was not nice. Literally, they'd throw you on the floor and just get right back in the car. And these are things like, if you ever seen the Central Park 5, right? Like you ever seen their documentary and you see them getting thrown on the wall? That was still happening in us early 2000s, right?
Yeah, they say 90% of stop and frisks result in nothing being found, no drugs, no weapons. So tell us about your first bid. Tell us about how you caught that first case that sent you to Rikers.
Yeah, robbery case. You know, robbed somebody. And I was 16 years old. I say this story all the time. I did not know Rikers existed for 16-year-olds. I wasn't expecting someone to slap me on the wrist. You know what I'm saying? Like I just didn't know what I was stepping into, right? And that was one of the issues that I wasn't prepared for. Like no one told us like, yo, this is how Rikers is. When I got grabbed up by the 30th precinct. I was 16 years old, and when I got grabbed up, I remember, you know, like I was in the holding pen. So they keep you in a holding pen when it's time for a bus to come pick you up, right? And first of all, I was questioned without my attorney being present. You know, like they didn't even tell me like, do you want a lawyer? You know, here. You know, my parents didn't even know their rights, right? Like they didn't even know that a lawyer can be present, right?
So they come to your crib and
they came in my crib.
Did they have a warrant?
They had a warrant.
Yeah.
They woke me up around like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And my pops was like, Vidal, come to the door, man. And I come to the door they had their vest on, NYPD, and I'm just thinking to myself like, oh, okay, I'm probably just gonna get questioned.
Yeah.
Because this, you know,
Did you know what it was about?
I didn't.
Because you were doing a lot of robberies.
Not just even a lot of robberies. I was getting myself in a lot of things, right? Like I was getting tickets for disorderly conduct or trespassing in front of my building. Like that's how I was being harassed. And that's how, when you are living in a red zone, that's what happens, right? You get harassed by police multiple times. So for me, like, I didn't know what exactly the case was about or who exactly it was for.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, that's when you know, when you have no idea what you're getting arrested for, that means you should probably be getting arrested because you're a criminal. Because you know that, right? You talk to OGs in the system, they're like, I have no idea how many felonies I have.
Oh yeah. But I was also 16 and that's a very true way to know. Like, I didn't know how I was in some shit. That's all I knew. Like I was doing a lot and like, I was just doing a lot. So, sometimes you can't keep count. I'm like, oh, did I do that or not?
How do you get to Rikers? Like logistically, you get arrested in a precinct in New York. Explain where you zigzag to until you get to the island. And how long does that take?
So it usually is different for now. For youth, when I was a youth and when I was 16 years old, and I had two different experiences at 16 and 19. When I was 16 years old, basically you be in a holding pen and, they have a bus out there. Or they'll drive you all the way down to Central, to downtown, so they can have you be processed and be not just be processed, but you're already processed, but also see the judge.
Right. So you go from your precinct where you get arrested, and then they take you downtown. And then how do they decide if you go to Rikers or not?
The judge would decide that.
Right. Okay.
Do they have enough evidence?
What were you charged? How many charges did you have? And what was your bail amount?
Robberies, and my bail was $25,000. So I don't know what other things was, but I know it was robbery. Right?
Did you have to put up 10% of that?
We had
$2,500.
Yeah, but
so you guys couldn't make that.
My mom's couldn't make that.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you also have to say where you got that money from, right?
Right. Tell us about that. Like they have to. You can't just bring in drug money.
And then you put in 10% down. Like bail bondsman wants to know, who are you? Like, where are you getting this money from? Especially if there's already some criminal.
Yeah. Does everybody that can't make bail get sent to Rikers?
Oh yeah.
Or if you can make bail, can you still bail out of Rikers? Or is that where you go when you can't make bail and you're sitting waiting to fight your case?
So the only way you might not be able to make bail if you have like a probation or parole hold.
Yeah.
At that time, I was tried as an adult, right? So basically, North Carolina and New York was the two states that tried kids as adults. So what happens is that little time between you getting prepared to go to Rikers, they put the cuffs on you, on your legs, and you on this bus, right? And, all of us are youth, right? Because now they got to separate them. You got to bring all of us on the bus is youth, and they have some adults in the front where they have them already caged in, right? Because what people don't understand, when you're on buses, they might have the regular population in the back of it and might have maybe someone in a smaller cube. So I didn't know what I was getting into until OG was like, hey man, y'all young bucks, get ready for Gladiator school. Some of the kids laughed, and I was just thinking to myself, like, I don't know what I'm about to get myself into.
That don't sound good.
Oh, no, it does not.
So you're being charged as an adult, but they do separate the kids, so there's inconsistency right there. If he's an adult, he should be with the adults, but thank God you weren't with the adults, because we know what happens with adults on Rikers, especially if you're gangbanging. How many, when you went to Rikers for the first time when you were 16, how many youths were incarcerated? No, just on Rikers in general. And how many of them were gang members? I assume a huge amount.
Yeah. So there were around, so we was in C-74. C-74 was a youth, and it had also adults who were sentenced and coming back from court. But we had one section where I'll probably say it was like probably like 800 kids, probably a little bit more than
Just
that.
in one cell block?
No, just in different, like NC-74.
Right.
So what happens is it'll be like one house, it'll be one upper, one main, and one lower. You get what I'm saying?
No,
so
what does that mean?
So basically, I mean 3 houses in one building. You
Got
get
it.
what I'm saying?
Right, because
So,
Rikers Island is a bunch of different buildings.
but then on top of that is also cell houses and also dormitory houses.
Right. Okay.
So basically, like, so how Rikers work, cells are for more high classification individuals.
Right.
So what happens is it's always an intake process. And majority of the youth are in dormitory. So dormitories is probably like 60 youth. But between those 60 youth, when I went in there, 40 of them was in some way in a gang.
Wow.
But then
And were you in a dorm when you first went there?
oh yeah, and mind you, I'm just a part of a local crew. I'm not even. I don't have no connection to the national organization or any national organizations.
So what was your first introduction to the beefs there?
Oh man, I mean, not even just the beef. My first introduction to Rikers was somebody put a spoon in my oatmeal, and somebody behind me when I went to, I just picked it out and just like, oh, he's probably just.
So somebody walked by your table and put a spoon in your oatmeal?
No, the person who was giving out the food, like, cause we lined up for getting food. I woke up because when I went into Rikers, it was already late. No more eating.
Yeah.
So I woke up and I'm sleeping on the, dormitory right next to someone 3 feet away that I don't even know, and waking up the next morning for breakfast. And I'm like over here, like, this is a new lifestyle for me. I'm 16 and I get up and people are like, yo, get online, man. You want to eat?
Yeah.
And, the guy that was, young dude who was giving out the food, put a spoon in my oatmeal. And I woke back and I was like, oh, he probably just left the spoon there by mistake. And a dude woke by behind me and was like, nah, bro. He disrespected you.
Oh, that's like a signal.
And I was like, what do you mean? Like, trying to like, gave me the spoon or should have, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, oh, wow. For real?
Yeah.
I didn't think nothing of it.
But that's a sign that basically means you gotta go fade.
Yeah, I gotta go fade. But mind you, I'm still new, so I don't want to get into that right now. I'm still trying to adjust where I'm at, and like maybe this dude got crews with him. I'm not just gonna pop off and then I'm just gonna get jumped. You know what I'm saying? Like I need to know who he has here. Maybe he has correctional officer connect. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
So he's before I even decide to do something, he's gone. The next day, he get moved to regular population.
Oh.
Now I hear he's going through it, right? Getting beat up, like.
But did you look like a punk though because you didn't go immediately fight him?
No, I think somebody told me that, and I didn't look like a punk. It was just like all of us we was all new. Some people was new, so we still trying to figure out how to actually live, or how to actually survive Rikers. But
how do you survive Rikers though? You've got to fight. So tell us about that. Tell us about the fighting.
I think for me, when I got into the fight, I was moved into one lower, and I learned that, at that time, youth had something called the system, right? And the system basically meant that some people overseeing the dorm, right? Like this is their dorm. They had, so they make the rules, they have a team under them, maybe 5 people who can fight. And, and then under them was like something called the rocking spot. So these rocking spots were individuals who maybe might know somebody in a different complex. And they're like, nah, make sure he don't get touched. He's good. And then you got people who like call the ride, right? Like, so that means you giving everything, your sneakers, your pen, everything.
So if you're a ride, that means you're a punk.
Yeah, but it's not just even like
that means you're a victim.
You're a victim, but you also at that time, like it's very hard because it's like that existed, right?
Black people in New York are so funny.
But the thing about it is like what it is that correctional officers would let that rock, right? Because they knew that they couldn't actually put their hands on you.
Right, that's interesting. So, and I saw that in your the other interview that you did. basically there was a new policy when you went in that COs on Rikers couldn't put their hands on youth inmates.
Detainees. So they couldn't put their hands. That was like, because you know what happens is if you put your hand on a youth, they can report it back to their lawyer and say, hey, this guy hit me, or they can take it to a sick call and say, I got hurt. Right. And you know what I'm saying?
They could probably use it their lawyers could probably use it as leverage in trial too.
But hear this out. In the early 2006, because I was on Rikers 2007, and majority of the times when people reported injuries, it was never written down, right? Like there's multiple people, even an author, even someone who was working there, talked about that youth reported injuries, but that wasn't. It was more injuries that didn't get reported, right? So even if I would have took this, let's say, if a correctional officer would have put their hands on me, if I would have took it down to, and got checked in, that means I put a target on my head.
And from the CO.
Oh yeah, and that's bad, right? Because
was there retaliation from COs to detainees?
Oh yeah, stuff like that can happen, right? Like what happens is like the correctional officer would tell whoever has the house, like, yo man, I need this to run like this. Wow. And if it doesn't run like this, you're gonna get in trouble.
Right. So because the COs can't directly touch the inmates or the detainees anymore, they just hire out whoever the shot caller of that unit is and say, you guys run it. So the inmates are literally running the asylum.
Yeah, basically. Like the youth was basically like the head will come up to the CO. What's going on? How's everything? She will know that he runs that house.
Okay, so I explain.
Or they or she or whoever.
So the system goes what do you call? What's the name of the shot caller? Give us the tiers of the system one more time.
Yeah. So the person who is the head, that he will be like he'll basically, it varies, right? So he'll be like he'll have the house, right?
Okay,
like,
and that's how you guys called it. He has the house?
Yeah, he'll have the house. Yeah,
and
this is his dorm.
Gotcha.
Well, this is his cell, you know what I'm saying?
And why did you have to be the most violent? Or the
violent or have a reputation, right?
Gotcha.
So a lot of times, also too, it would be like Monopoly for gangs, right? What people don't understand in the youth, a lot of youth were gang involved, right? So like it was also, when I mean Monopoly, that means like people would know where certain places, if this house was blood, Trinitario, or this house was Crip, people will know, right? And like, for a lot of these young guys, it was building their gang culture or building their reputation. So a lot of times when they was known as having a dorm and they was running, people outside would hear of that, right? So
they could actually, if they ran their own house and built their stripes in jail, like once they got out to the streets,
they might
were
get
on
stars, you know what I'm saying? They might get on, or it also might be a survival, you know what I'm saying? Like I gotta be the most violent because I don't want what I tell people to do to happen to me.
Right.
And a lot of times I've been in situations when people internally turn on the people who has the head, right?
Right.
Because Monopoly, when I mean Monopoly, is like a certain gang, a leader might come to that house and say, you know what? I want this.
Yeah. I got the house.
Yeah,
I'm the
what you gonna do?
Right.
And then basically that means either way, it can get really bad, right?
Yeah.
So let's say if this guy is blood that came in and it's a Trinitario house. That means internally they just started a war. So the red light was NC-74. It will ring like really loud. You knew that the turtles, was the police,
the stormtroopers.
The stormtroopers.
They got the big masks on. They're wearing like hockey gear. It looks like they're dressed like hockey goalies. They got all this padding on.
So you knew they was coming.
Yeah. And that means when the red light goes off, that means there's funk.
There's something going on somewhere. And
does everybody have to get down? Like if the house is a blood house and a Trini or somebody else from a different gang comes in and they try to take the house, are you expected to get down?
Some
to start
people
fighting?
won't even enter in won't enter in the space. So before you enter,
really?
so when you when you enter inside a dormitory or cell, there's a gate that is before you get in, right? So a lot of times I've seen people not even come inside and say, "Nah, I'm not going inside."
Yeah. Oh, because there's
I'm standing right here.
right. Because I don't want to go get out
because I don't want to get
crazy.
jumped. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be outnumbered.
And then the COs they'll
have to call the sergeant and tell him like, yeah, we got a guy that don't want to be here. Why? He is because of this gang, and they'll probably move him out.
Yeah, I'm
It's
sure.
been like that.
And so then will they move him out? Will they send you the hole?
No,
if you
they'll probably
refuse
send him to a different. They'll send him to a different area.
Wow. So that sounds pretty nice of them.
It does.
Because if you were where I was locked up at, they would just be like, I don't give a get in there. They'd either put you in, and if you refused, you get a whole shot.
Yeah,
so
I know.
You guys, it sounds like the inmates are really running it. So, do you recall being in those fights, those big brawls?
Oh yeah, I mean, like those are
okay. So the house you're in, you're getting ingratiated. What house were you in?
I was in one lower. I didn't last too long.
Why?
I didn't, because at the end of the day, like, I wasn't gonna survive. Me fighting in there, like, I wasn't a part of a gang, right? Like, I wasn't a part of the Bloods, right?
Yeah.
And what a lot of times, that means that a majority of people didn't know who I was too. So I wasn't just building up who I was as an individual. I had to, like, people didn't know who I was, right?
So
and
what does that mean though? Were you getting jumped?
Getting jumped.
Tell me about this.
That means you're getting jumped. That means that you might not even get a fair fight with someone. Right. You know, like, I think people forget, like.
So what would you do if you got jumped 2-on-1?
Oh man, you got to just keep swinging and keep your corner to the back.
Right. Keep
and just grab one person and just
right.
start swinging.
Did you ever, like, would you ever grab a weapon if they saw you coming? Grab a piece of whatever?
No, I just grab the TV and throw it at them.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, anything I can grab. Chairs that we can use, anything. Wow. Because at that one moment is me against them.
Yeah.
Right? And for me, like, I never lasted too long there.
Yeah.
So
if you get jumped, they send you to a different
they send you
house?
to a different house and stuff like that.
Wow.
So when I went through that, it was just like shocking, right? Like, I was just in a whole shocking moment, because it's different from you doing violence out in the world, right? Because you can just literally run away from beef, or, you know what I'm saying? Or I don't want to beef right now. Like, and you're locked up, you got to deal with it.
There's no choice.
No choice. And for me, like, I had to either figure out who I was going to be, right? Was I going to be a sheep and be slaughtered, or I was going to be a wolf and try to survive? And for me, that's what I chose, right?
And you chose to be a wolf. So did you ever get your own house? Did you ever run your own house?
No, that was...
So did you have a ranking? Like did you ever actually end up on your first shot when you're 16? I'm not talking about when you're 19. Did you ever actually join a gang?
No, not in there.
Or you stayed unaffiliated the whole time?
I stayed unaffiliated.
Wow.
But I got into a lot of fights.
Yeah.
And
now, when you tell me about that, you get in a fight until the CO says enough.
Yeah.
And then do you get a whole shot, or do they just send you back to your bunk?
It varies, right? Like, not every fight people get caught up, right? Like, some fights you can, in the dormitory, me and you might have a problem and wait till the CO go, like, just get it on when the light turn off. And we either we're going to be grown kids, grown men, or we're going to act like kids and just, after the light turns on, keep swinging at each other. So it's like, some individuals handle it like that. And that was the best way to, you know what, let me just handle it like that. Let's do what we do.
So would you remember, like, give us some examples of something that could just cause a fight?
Oh, man. Time slot, right? Some people got certain phone.
Phone time. Tell us about the phone politics. Yes, please.
Yeah. I think for me, the phone, I didn't never know how deep of an issue it was until I was 16, right? Like, I think for me, like, I never got into the controlling the phones until I was 19 years old.
How does that work, though? Tell us. Yeah.
So basically, example, so I was 19 and I was in C-75. This is where the 19 to 24, they still got GED, high school for us. But when I was locked up 19 years old, we were a problem. Like we were a problem. Like when I say that is that when I was in a dormitory, who had the house? 19-year-olds. And these are grown men who are there, 40, 50, 35. Some already did bids. And I remember my first time when it was going to get really bad. The Lion Kings, Trinitario, and the Bloods in the same dorm. And I was thinking to myself, I'm Dominican and I can be the middleman between all of this, right? And at that time, I was Blood. So at that time, for me, it was how do we just sit all the heads who are in this side and figure it out? We sat right in the dormitory and just sat down and say, how do we figure this phones out, right? We have way too much Bloods. They love time slots. So the Bloods had 2 phones. We had the Trinitalios had 1 phone. The Lion Kings had another phone. And we had a neutral phone. So we had 5 phones. So neutral phones is anyone can get on. But every single phones can be used by anyone after a certain time. So after 9 o'clock or 8:30, you cannot use that phone. You know what I'm saying? So that is all people who are in the gang culture time slot.
Yeah. And so if you use somebody else's time slot, that's automatic.
Oh yeah, you gain it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you gain it. And dormitories are scary, right? Because you can literally be sleeping and somebody jump on top of you and start cutting you.
Did that happen?
It happens in the dorm.
Do people get cut in the dorms?
Oh yeah.
Even the youths?
Oh yeah. It gets real. Dormitories are more, for me, I think is more scarier than being in a cell, right? Because in a cell, you can sleep peacefully and you know when that cell open, it's I better be prepared for something. But
in the dorms, you're just exposed.
Up
you're just
right
exposed
there.
all the time.
Oh yeah, you literally are 3 feet away from someone.
Yeah. So when you're 16, how long are you waiting? How long are you fighting your case for?
So I was fighting my case for a year. I was going to different dorms. I landed in a dorm that was more like a program, right? Their way of trying to help youth return back to society. So I met some correctional officers who had some Black Panther Party backgrounds. So for me, while I was awaiting there, I was waiting there for a year, but that doesn't mean I was not getting into fights. I was getting into fights on visiting floors too. People who was trying to build their reputation as the part of being the gang culture.
Yeah.
That means anyone can be.
Anybody's a target.
Yeah, and one guy that was in the same, when I moved into this dorm, he was slowly gonna be Trinitario. So he had to prove himself. You know what I'm saying? And he was DDP at first and then turned Trinitario.
And then, did he test you?
Oh yeah, he did. What happened was he was working C-74 and he was working where they give the jumpsuit. So to see your loved ones, you get jumpsuit. You get a gray one or a lime green one. The lime green one is they know you're bringing in. You know what I'm saying? And you need to keep this on. But I was getting ready to get a jumpsuit and a guy see me. He was like, yo, look who it is, man. He started talking and I'm like, yo, bro, come on, man. And I'm looking around me, mind you, people around me who are coming to see their loved ones are also heads of different houses, right? So now I got to prove myself. I'm not a part of any gang. And I got to do something, right? So I got my jumpsuit, and I was like, you know what? I got ready to see my moms. And I told my moms yo, Ma, you might not see me for a while. I might go to solitary confinement. And she said, why? I said, I might get in a fight when I go back in. But just don't worry. I'll hold myself. I'm okay. And, seeing my mom's crying, I was like, yo, I was so angry, literally boiling. And once I stepped in, he kept going on. But this time, so when you get your jumpsuit, you got to give him the jumpsuit back. So it has a gate open and there's a little slot a big slot that somebody can slide through. This dude slided through that slot and started talking. And I was like, no, I swung. Because I don't got time for that.
Yeah.
You literally, I don't know what you was going to do. But then after I beat him up in the correctional.
You beat him up?
Oh, yeah, I had to.
You put him on his pockets.
I put him in.
You put him on the ground.
Oh, man. Everybody around me was like, whoa.
Clean.
Clean.
What is your strategy for jail fighting? Like, do you just want to knock a guy as hard as you can right away, right?
I mean, first, I mean, who am I fighting, right? Like, because I think that's, there's some people who can really fight.
And you're such a small guy.
Oh, yeah.
What was your strategy when bigger guys wanted to fade with you?
Oh, man, you just got to swing. And if you got to be able to keep swinging, you lose, you lose. If you win, you win. I think one of the most important rules in jail is, like, as long as you didn't step down. You know what I'm saying? Like, some people take ass whoopings. Some people lose fights. But
what about like nut shots? Can you fight
you can
dirty?
Do all of that.
You can
do that, all that.
You can
Bite them, all that.
Step on toes.
Yeah,
you can do all that.
Or everything. There's no rules to that.
Okay.
So for me, like when I got into that fight, the correctional officer took me off and was like, nah, you good. He didn't start the fight. This guy did. So I don't know what happened to him, but he was like, yo, man, why you hit me, man? I was just trying to.
Oh, he's being a bitch
now. Yeah. Like, come on now. Like, so I looked around me and the people who were also watching was heads of different houses. So now I'm like, okay, I'm pretty okay.
So you got
now
some stripes.
I got some stripes, right? Now people are dipping me up and stuff like that.
And they didn't send you to the hole for that?
Nah, they didn't because I didn't start the fight. Wow. I was just defending myself. So the correctional officer seen that was like, nah.
Did you ever, while you were waiting to go to trial, did you ever go to the hole when you were young? Like your first time? So you got in all those fights and you never went to the hole?
Nope. Nope. Even if I would have had whole time, like basically solitary confinement time, there was so much people doing solitary confinement, they would have had to wait for me. Some people was waiting a year.
Just to do their time in the hole.
Just to do 30 days. You don't know where you're taking. Like, mind you, this was so everyone's story, right? And this was the scariest thing. You can go to commissary and spend $150, and then you go to solitary confinement, and the next day you got to give all that away.
Oh my God.
That's scary.
Yeah, that's wild. And you just lost $150.
People, it happened to so much people. Like, people
did you see people getting? Did you see? What do you call them? Rides? Did you see any of those guys getting their bags of commissary taken?
Their bags, their sneakers. But I also seen people like them actually step up and learn about the system and say, you know what, I'm gonna just go wild.
And they would move from rides up to, what is the middle? You're not the head of the house, but what's
You're not the. You
what's
might be
the middle
team.
class?
So like, what happens is if someone's on this ride, they'll basically fight someone on the team, right? And maybe be on the team, right? So it's like it's like the status, right? You know what I'm saying?
So you can actually move up.
You can always move up.
And then if you're a real hard rock,
unless they really don't like you. And I've seen people who were like really tough, but they just didn't like them. And no matter how many times they have fights, they get jumped again and again. Yeah, and it's like, that's when you knew where you can't live there, right? Like sometimes some people be like, yo, I just had like 3-4 fights and I beat up 3 people. You just probably beat up the wrong people.
Right.
And now you just can't be there.
Right. Yeah, and they just literally run you off.
Jump you before you go to school, and jump you after you come out of school, jump you on the dance.
And you would see guys like that, victims.
Oh, man. And just, I mean, like, some people like...
And you feel bad for them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, look, when you talk about stories as like Khalif Browder's story, right? Like, his story is similar to a lot of people's story.
Right.
He was having, like, he'll have a fight and then move to another dormitory, had a fight there and then move to another dormitory.
And he's just literally getting jumped everywhere he goes.
Everywhere you go. And that was the part of for me, like, not being a part of any major crew or major gangs, right?
So you had kind of a similar situation to Khalif Browder.
But the thing about it is, with him, he was he was innocent, right? Like I was a stick-up kid. He was innocent, awaiting trial for a book bag for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
The people went up in ranks because of his case, right? The DA, the Bronx DA was the judge at that time.
Black woman.
Yeah. And, it was rough. Hearing his story, like, is so many different stories.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that was a powerful documentary. But so you're like Khalif, but you're surviving a little better.
yeah, I was surviving because I didn't have the correctional officers on my back, right? Like, you know, like a lot of times you can be a target, right? You can, you know, like, be an asshole to correctional officers. And people will know who you are. Like, correctional officers talk. They will put a target on your back.
Was there any, you know, in adult prisons, everybody knows by now what gladiator fights are. Did they have anything like that in the youth houses on Rikers?
Yeah, that happens. There's a, you know, because people forget, cameras started being put in Rikers Island around like 2004. They started putting more cameras in 2005. And, you know, so there was blind spot, as people call it, right? And those blind spot was big enough for people to knuckle it up and just and act like nothing happened, right? So those things, they were places, and fight clubs happen, right? Like those are things that.
And Fight Club is. Tell us what is Fight Club?
Basically, like, the Fight Club would be a lot different than people see on the movie, right? The Fight Club would be for survival, right? Like the abilities for people to go up in ranks, or individually to just survive. Like, again, right? To make sure that my stuff don't get took in, you know, that I'll be able to call my family whenever I can, you know, that I
what is it? It's an organized.
Yeah, it's an organized thing that someone and whoever is the head controls, right? Like, let's say they got a whole bunch of new people who came in and they want to, you know, they want these positions. They got to throw that Fight Club, you know, and then.
So you have multiple people fighting in Fight Club?
Oh, man, yes. You even have people. I seen one guy fight 3 guys. One fight, he's done. Okay, all right, next fight. Okay, next fight. All right, I'm good.
He went three for three.
And,
wow.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, this guy knows a duck. So it's like,
and COs, a lot of times COs will let this happen knowingly.
Oh man, they will let this happen, and it's like the only way that we would know when to stop if correctional officers be like, hey, stop! What the is y'all doing? Like, I got my sergeant come in, and I don't need that. And then you like, you know.
It's only when they could get in trouble from their higher ups that they stop anything.
Yeah, like one time, like I got in a fight. I lost that fight. I had a black eye, and the guy, the correctional officer, was like, "You okay?" Yeah, I'm okay. Oh, you look okay. No, I don't look okay. You saying I got a black eye? I got in a fight. So it's like, at that moment in time, you know, like. It was this moment where correctional officers did not play a role in any type of safety role. Like, and even, you know, when I went to see, with the same black eye, I went to go see my my lawyer, and my lawyer was like, "What the is going on?" And had to call, like, was trying to move me out the dorm. I'm like, I don't need to be moved out the dorm. I'm good. No. And I had to tell him, anywhere you go, it's like this.
So there's no escape.
It's no
Doesn't matter if you
escaping.
go to a different dorm.
Nah, it's like it changes. The environment being 16 changes, right? Because you might be good for a month and a half with no fights, but then a whole bunch of new people get moved out and then new people come in.
I was going to ask you this before. I just remembered how adults, when sex offenders or people with bad paperwork come in, obviously they're terrible things happen to them in adult prisons. Are there any kind of rules in the youth houses around people that would come in for like sex crimes or anything like that?
More when we was 19.
Okay.
Right? Like, I think when you was 19, when I was 19, that played a little bit more of a role, right? Like, we're here about people, you know, they're 16, right? Like, you know, 16, 17. I see more of that when 19, 20-year-olds, right?
Where it seems a little bit more predatory. Although a 16-year-old can abuse a little kid, you know.
But I never heard of that story.
Okay.
If it was, I probably.
So it wasn't like somebody hit the house, a new kid hit the house, 16-year-old, let's check his paperwork to make sure. It wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that.
It wasn't like to the penitentiary.
In New York prisons, it's more like if they want to see your paperwork, something's going on. Like you got to be a part of a crew, you know what I'm saying? Or like if you're hanging out with this person, you want to see that paperwork, right? Like if I'm meeting you and let's say we're hanging out, we're walking the yard, I want to see your paperwork. I want to know what you're in here for because I don't want to walk around you and know that you have some of these charges on you, right?
Right. But your charges doesn't mean you're going to be targeted like it would in like the penitentiary.
Yeah, I mean more when you're 19.
Right. Okay, so let's save it then. Okay, so then how does this play out? You're just going through hell for your first year in Rikers. Do you beat your case? Do you take it to the box? Do you cop out?
Nah, I got a 6 months and 5-year probation. So 6 months of cases. So I got an opportunity to return back to society.
What does that mean? You got sentenced to 6 months.
Yeah, I got sentenced to time served 6 months. So
Right.
whatever I already did was basically took away from my probation, right? So I came home to 6 months of cases and 5-year probation.
I see. That's what they call it.
So yeah, so I was 17 years old. I went to do cases. So cases is supposed to be this organization that helps you to return you back to society. Excuse me. And I was very successful in it, you know, got a job and stuff like that.
What were you doing?
I was working I was working at this NY spoken word, like nonprofit downtown. Because that was my first, you know, when I came home, that was my first experience to trying to get a job. But that doesn't mean like problems that I was dealing with was still continuing, right? Like, you know, the beefs.
Yeah. Because you're back in your old neighborhood.
But when I was 17, 18, that was like problems started getting more harsh, right?
How
like,
so?
Cops will harass me. Like I will be going to court every single week to beat quotas, like your little pink tickets, like trespassing. Like I was being harassed by police. So every single week I had to go to court to beat these little quotas, or basically in New York, they're like these tickets you get for trespassing or disorderly conduct. So
Like summons.
Yeah. So I would get all these summons and...
But were you actively gangbanging in the street at this time, or were you going straight?
Oh yeah, I was all the way active.
Oh, okay. So
So
you sort of deserved it. They weren't just, you weren't just an innocent guy. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, I wasn't an innocent guy, but the part that was very hard to intake is that they use any tactic to,
Of course.
basically to harass me, right? Trespassing in front of my building. Disorderly conduct because I say, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, you speaking, you know, things like that. Or, you know, so like, these was regular, you know, cops, right?
Yeah.
With the blue
Beat
and the
cops.
beat cops, right? And they will give quotas while the D's would jump out on us, right?
Wow.
And imagine in a week, you know, example, when I told you I maybe get stopped 5 times. And then on top of that, I pick up 4 summons.
And how much is that? What kind of fines are you looking at between 4 summons?
4 summons would probably be like trespassing. And mind you, I was on probation. So when you're on probation, you are supposed to report
Any police contact.
Yeah.
And it's 5 times a week. You're getting broken.
I couldn't, and I
And
didn't.
how much are you supposed to pay for these summons? Like, do they charge you money?
If you lose,
Oh, so you have to fight them.
you have to fight them. So and it was in the same building as my probation building. So I had to go downtown and show up in front of the clerk and, you know, in front of the individual and say, hey, I want to fight this. And they say, oh, this has been dismissed. And multiple times I'll do that. Or like, you know, it've been times where, you know, I got picked up for having, you know, like they saying that I had a knife on me, right? Like, you know, I'll be with another neighborhood, right? And maybe they got into a fight and we all start running and I don't got nothing to do with it, right? And, you know, I'll run and the cops just start locking everyone up.
Right.
And, you know, like what happens is they'll pick up a knife and say, hey, this is your knife. That is not my knife.
Right.
And I literally, that case itself, I had to go to court 6 times. And they was trying, multiple times they wanted to give me community service. And I told the judge, that's not my knife. And I'm not taking that. It was so bad. These summons was so bad that I was a part of a lawsuit when I first came home in 2015, that I got payments, summons that was dismissed. So I was part of a lawsuit of individuals who
like a class action lawsuit against people that were just harassed by these summons. So it's almost like if you're a young black guy, Latino guy from the hood that has spent time in the system, that's on probation, that's hot in one of these, you call them red zones.
Red zones, yeah.
Brownsville, parts of Harlem, right? These are gang, drug infested neighborhoods. And you come home from Rikers, you got to move, or else they make it so hard for you to reintegrate, or you just got to go completely square. You got to
imagine you coming home and then like seeing seeing police calling your name on the speaker, like, look who it is, he's home.
Right. You're just walking down the street minding your business,
chilling in front of my block.
Yeah.
With a couple of friends, maybe getting some Popeyes.
Yeah. Right. And it's it's like what Palestinians go through in the West Bank, right? It's I have Israeli friends that are like, well, we don't kill that many of them over there, but it's not just about like outright murder. It's the daily harassment and humiliations.
Oh yeah.
So you're going through these, but at the same time, look, you were kind of straying from what you were supposed to be doing. Now, did you ever violate an outright and get sent before you went back for your second crime? Did you ever violate?
That was the violation.
Oh, okay.
The second crime was the violation.
That was the violation.
But what happened was, the more I started getting into that life, the more I started getting involved in the Bloods, right? When I first joined the Bloods, for me, like, I don't think people understand, like, joining the Bloods, I was already a part of a local crew. Like, I was like telling people what to do, and then now you were a part of a set that you're new. You know what I'm saying?
Did you have stripes when you went back to the block after your first Rikers bid? Did you have stripes because you survived Rikers?
Yeah, all the way. And then on top of that is like, there's this like arrow put on you, right? Like, yo, he just came home, like he had a couple fights. People know, people talk, right? And that was one of the issues that I knew, that there was like this target behind my back. And not just me. It wasn't just me coming home. People we was beefing with was coming home too. So like, they was getting that same like, you know what I'm saying? And
so it's literally the streets are like a mirror image of where you just came from in jail. Everybody. So why join the Bloods?
Yeah.
And what was the thought process behind that? And why, how did you start getting active with them? Tell us.
Yeah, I think before I started getting active with them, for me, it was like they was always around me, right? Like, I felt like I was asked multiple times to be a part of the Bloods, and I felt like, well, it's maybe not the right time for me. Maybe it's not enough of my people joining. And at one time, we all
you mean Dominicans?
No, just like people from my neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah, like, because we did have blood, people who was blood, but we also are a family, right? Like, when I mean family, we all hung out together, ate each other's house, and like collectively, we was like, you know what? I think it's time for us to be Blood, and we decided to take, have the conversation with the homies, with the blood homies, about us joining Bloods.
Who are the Blood homies?
East Coast Bloods.
Yeah.
You want me to say they set?
No, like where do they operate out of?
Yeah. So they operated out of my neighborhood, right?
Okay.
Like, we had...
So Harlem Bloods. Are these older guys?
Yeah, older guys around my brother's age.
And are these black African Americans?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm Dominican, but I grew up in a black neighborhood.
Right.
So what people don't know is that my neighborhood was basically black. It wasn't that much of Dominicans. Right. You had to go a couple more blocks in the hill to see the Dominicans. So I was already an oddball, right? I was Dominican. You can see I'm Dominican. And, so me first joining the Bloods was a very different type of, it was different, right? Because even my mom's, when she found out I was Blood, was like, Blood? Like, I thought that was like an African gang and stuff like that. But then when I started, seeing how meetings was was thrown, right? Like I was being, but the Bloods was off. So let me tell you something, why the Blood East Coast is a lot different than the West Coast, because every member was from somewhere else, right? Different blocks. So it might, like, how the West Coast, they might have a whole neighborhood that might be Blood. Some of these Blood sets might be members from all different neighborhoods or spread out to a Harlem, right?
Yeah.
So
what is a Blood meeting like?
Oh man, it was weird because it was like, it'll be like in this, like, I don't know if they rented out the spot for us to be at, but it would be like, you ever seen like those school tables? So it would literally be like we was at a school table and like you see all different Bloods, different age. You could tell the difference, right? Like we was young.
What do you mean? They would rent out like commercial space in a building
space
to hold a meeting?
Yeah, hold a meeting.
How many people are there?
80. That means,
wow.
Yeah, like my first time being introduced to the set I was a part of, 80 people. I was like, oh, and this was so it's, they do borough meetings, right? So the set from that borough would probably meet, but this time we had all meetings,
a whole New York City wide meeting.
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
in Harlem.
Yeah, no, in the Bronx. We had it right in the Bronx. We got a space in the Bronx.
I'm picturing something out of the movie Warriors.
Oh yeah,
like,
it was
you
like
seen
that.
Like,
yeah, it was literally like that. Like
wow.
So
you're what do you discuss? Who leads the meeting, and what are you discussing in the meeting?
It can be the head, whoever it is, the boss, so whoever is the OG is leading the meetings. Also, they might have other people from different sets to explain conflicts that's going on, because in the East Coast is, there's different, not just set, but nations, right? United Blood Nation, Stone Nations, Hat Nation. It's so many different nations, right? And like what people forget about the East Coast, like when they were in the East Coast, they was first under umbrella called the United Blood Nation, right? So all different sets were basically launched under this.
Oh,
right?
wow. And so, but at this particular meeting of all the
was
Blood
only
members,
our set, but our leadership had leadership in the UBN, right? So we would hear not just what's going on internally in our set, but we would hear what's going on in other sets too.
Meaning what? Like
internal problem, politics.
Do you hear who got locked up or who is locked up?
Who's locked up? Who need? Do anyone want to tip in to send money? Do anyone want to tip in to go see the big homie? Like stuff like that. So those things happen.
Were you guys talking about criminal activity?
Or
was it more like what you talked about,
politics,
like kind of like
varies.
politics?
Yeah. But a lot of times what people don't understand, when you have set meetings, that means something is happening, right? Like, like either when I first joined, the books was supposed to be closed. Basically, it meant that no sets in the East Coast was supposed to recruit
accepting
new members into, they're able to figure out what they have right now. You know what I'm saying? Like that was the rule.
Yeah.
And that was something that was been said for many years.
Do the Bloods, the organizations that are on the streets, is it just like the West Coast? They make their living slinging drugs. Is that the same in New York?
Varies. It's extortion. It can also be
gun running.
A lot of times. Yeah, a lot of gun running. It can be tapping into already existing things that's happening in other different places. So you might see other Blood members be in Connecticut or Virginia, and that's how certain sets grow, right?
But so that's all got to be based on drugs, though. Usually, it's crack cocaine.
Mainly, yeah.
What was your? So it sounds fairly organized if you guys are holding meetings.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe that's real.
I mean, but you got to understand, like the people who, and I won't really say their names.
You don't have to say names, but I want to know, like details.
Who was there were people who were been Blood their whole, and since it came to the East Coast. So like the leadership we already had were already existing, had experienced a lot, been through a lot, know how to organize, know how to, go through, been through issues, right?
So now you've gone from this crew to now being absorbed into this bigger gang organization.
Yeah.
So what do you start out like putting in work for them? Is that how, do you do that? Or do you just get to claim blood, but still stay on the corner?
Yeah, it varies, right? Like a lot of times people, it might be a recruitment, right? Like, oh, we might have to turn this block blood, right? Like, let's turn this block blood for whatever reason, right? Like the big homie might live on this block. You know what I'm saying? So we want to make sure that, this guy's the brain, this guy is the one who's leading everything. We want to make sure that they're good, right? Or, like, it been situations where, and also on top of that, after I turned blood, I didn't have that much time to even try to put in work. Like I got locked up.
Okay.
And now it's a lot different when you're like blood, right? And, or you're a part of a bigger national organization, right?
Because when you go to jail, now you get to say, I'm a blood.
Yeah.
And that does something. Like blood is a brand.
Yeah.
It's a brand.
And also you got to learn, you have the ability to learn language, right? To be able to interact with each other without anyone else knowing.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit. Blood language.
Blood language it's created by OGs, right? Like the OGs will figure out blood language, send it out from, like literally this would be someone from prison who maybe has, who's locked up. I'm not going to say too much time, who maybe has some time, and they'll sit down and write out the lingo and send it out to everyone or anyone who can get it to anyone's hands that they're supposed to have.
So like if he's trying to organize a hit, he'll send an order from prison in the blood lingo. Yeah,
but also that'll have to happen through visit. So you can't do that anymore where you're like sending letters and saying, hey, I need this guy out.
Yeah.
They'll read your mail. What you can do if someone comes and someone can come see you and you tell them what they need to do.
Yeah.
And they need to actually deliver that to whoever, and they need to push whatever they say.
So you know how to speak blood language? Or you know how to decipher it? You can read it?
In some way, every set has their own language to interact with each other, but then we have a universal language, how to interact with each other, right? So you always had ways of interacting with each other, knowing who is who. So yeah, like I didn't know the language. I had to read stuff. Like literally, I had to read the books of it, the history of it.
So they have history books
History's
on the Bloods?
written on the set. The set itself are so organized. They had their set history, what they've kind of been through and stuff like that.
And when you go to these meetings, they pass out that literature.
You got to read it and you got to remember it. If you don't, you get in a lot of fights.
Wow. That's wild. Okay, so tell us about how you violated your parole, and now we'll get into the second stretch.
Man, I got into beef, and I caught another robbery. I got into...
What happened? Tell us about the robbery.
Man,
we like details in the show.
We mistaken someone for the wrong person. And like we thought that this guy was somebody we was beefing with. We beat him up, found out that wasn't a guy. We got locked up. People took stuff off him and stuff like that. And I was like, yo. Now, for me, like I knew it's my second time going to Rikers for robbery. So I knew I was going to.
Were you charged with assault as well?
For me, what I hit with was with robbery second.
Okay, so when you are on parole for a crime and you get caught doing another crime, you get parole violation, or you're charged with another crime, I should say. Usually, in every case I know, your parole's violated. You got a parole violation, and then you're automatically disqualified for bail. Correct?
Yeah, most likely. Yeah. So I had another. So my bail was $25,000 again, and basically what happens when you violate probation.
So you got a bail.
Yeah, I got a bail, but I can't bail out because I have a
The
probation.
PO, the hold. Yeah, the hold. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So why even give me a bail option when I can't take it? Why even give me a number?
so for me, like so you got to see your probation officer, and at that time they wouldn't come see me on Rikers. They had this new system that you can see them through TV. And
Right.
and they
It's
can
like
talk to you.
FaceTime.
Oh yeah. So for me, like I already knew I was gonna get violated. Like this guy was wasting my time. So I told the probation officer, I said, man, I don't even know why you wasting my time. Keep bringing me down here. I got so angry. I don't know what happened. And I told him, I said, yo, suck my man. Like this, like I don't care about none of this no more. Like it should be my last time doing this. Like I was angry, right? Like I would learn later on that the guy was trying to just give me a year, and I got violated. When what happened was they was like, you know what? Because the judge heard about me telling my probation officer that I told him suck my that I got another 6 months and
Damn.
So now I had to do the year and a half, right? So I got violated.
The year and a half is the parole violation time.
The probation violation.
Right. The probation violation. Yeah.
And then on top of that, I also copped out to 3.5 years.
For the assault or for the robbery.
For the
new
robbery.
robbery.
Yeah. So for me, like I took the case almost to trial and until the DA actually gave me a lower number, and I was
Departure.
like, yeah,
And
they
you
was
took
trying to
it.
give me 5 years, and I'm like, damn, 5 years on top of the year and a half, running wild. So basically meant like after I finish with one, I got it, the other one starts.
Right.
So for me, it was like, okay, we got
so that was going to be on consecutive, not concurrent.
yeah.
Oh no,
Horrible.
that's very rare. Usually, like, well, in cases that I saw, if you had a parole violation or a probation violation and then a new crime, and you took the new deal, they would usually just run the probation violation concurrent. You know, they'll just blend it in. But now you're stacked.
Yeah,
That
and I
means
don't know SMD was the reason, but I knew that I had to. So I copped out to 3.5. You know, when I was like, I took the 3.5 and then also doing in a year and a half, right? But I don't think people, if you ever been through trial, like that's a scary moment, right? You got to pick out people for your juror.
Yeah.
Your life is in people's hands, right?
When you went back to Rikers, though, how long were you there fighting the case before you finally took the plea?
You mean you talking about 19?
Yeah, I'm talking about this time.
Same. I was there for like a year, and I didn't. Yeah, like I was there for a year. I was in C-75, and I was 19 years old, still continuing my GD.
So what's the difference now? You're 19. You're a blood.
Yeah,
You're in a blood dorm.
Yeah.
Now, do you try to take the house?
Oh, nah. It's
Okay.
not, because it was a lot different than the youth.
Yeah.
Right? Because the youth.
Oh, are you now in an adult?
Yeah, I'm in an adult facility.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
Basically, but that doesn't mean that they're 19 to 24 is like, they're still keeping us together, right? So at that time, I was in C-75 where they still had schooling, but they mixed the 19-year-olds with the older population. So we were in there with the older population. And, usually people tell you this is not you're not in C-74. There's no fighting. There's no, I got the cheer. I got the dorm. This is my house. It's none of that. Excuse me, but you slowly learn that there's some type of controlling that happens.
So when you went to the adult facility, is that where you started to notice more slashings and knife fighting and like big boy crime?
Yeah, for me, I started noticing that. I think for me, like I learned, you always ask who you know. You banging, bro, like, you know what I'm saying? And that it was a lot different now that I'm stepping into the space and I'm saying, I'm a part of this set. And when they hear the set, they're like, oh, like we don't really hear your set coming through here a lot. So they're like, okay, then everyone would know that I'm in the space. So when I landed in my first dorm, I was met with just bloods who was there. They was like 19, 20 years old. My first interaction was in that, not in that dorm, was when I was moved into a smaller dorm and I got in a fight with a Crip. And in C-74 or C-75, I'm corrected, they keep the Crips in Inhumane. Inhumane was a place where most of the Crips was at. Mind you,
And are Crip sets, there could be a Crip set from Harlem, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so everything's blended together just like the crews are. Okay.
Yeah. So, the Crips got a Harlem Mafia Crips.
Harlem Mafia Crips.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
there's a live set that been in Harlem for a very long time. But they are separated. Where I was at, there was a lot of Trinitalios and Bloods, right? But me being Dominican, I was able to maneuver through a lot, right? And I was also able to be the middleman through a lot of situations.
So was this stretch easier than before at 16 when you were not affiliated?
Somewhat.
Was there less? It sounds, were you assaulted less? Like, were you jumped less when you were 19?
You can't jump a blood. You can't do that.
Oh, really?
No, you can't.
Why not?
Can't. You cannot. One of the things about it is that when you can literally cause a war in the building. And I've been in times when we beef with Trinitalios and everywhere is popping off. At the same time.
All other dorms?
At the same time. So me and you get in a fight. Brrr, everybody's getting a fight.
So all the red lights are going off.
Literally. That means people who are correctional officers who are trying to leave cannot leave until this is shut down.
Wow.
And so I've been in situations where...
What happens when it's all the dorms are popping off? Do they have to come in and lock everybody down? Do they have to spray pepper spray? Like, what's the reaction from the COs?
So the thing about it is, someone will write... So, the information will be delivered for someone who's getting Medicaid, right? Like getting the pills and stuff like that. That one person has to write a note or whoever is sending the hit out, send this out to everyone, is on site. Everybody has to pop off at the same damn time.
Wow. And he's the one who sends that, spreads it to everywhere else.
Because they want to make sure if we're going to do it, we're going to do it all at the same time.
So wow. So the Bloods, it sounds like the Bloods have the strongest set, the strongest crew, the strongest presence on Rikers. Am I wrong?
It varies, right? Because every building is different, right? And just because you might have the strongest set, you might have other people who might be able to fight,
right. But it sounds like they protect their own. If you touch a Blood, then that means everybody is going to get up.
Oh yeah, and like that stuff like that happened. And
so there is some value in being a gang member. It sounds like it's primarily protection when you end up getting locked up, right?
Yeah, for me, it wasn't protection. I was a part of a crew, a family. But then when you get in that space and you're being outnumbered,
you get to say, I'm a Blood. So if you guys want to all go to war, do it.
But even a lot of times for me, when I was I was very active, I was never like, oh, I'm Blood. And no, I was myself, but also I'm Blood. You get what I'm saying? And the longer I started doing my bids, controlling phones was a very important, it happens a lot, even in prisons, right?
Do people make money out of the phone business?
Oh, they can. Yeah, they can. Some people don't got calls, right? Some people don't got nobody to call. They sell you their stuff for soups and stuff like that.
Right.
So and then upstate, some people don't turn on the phones to someone. So they have to sell a call for a 3-way to call somebody 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? So those things happen, but the phones was what was getting me in trouble my whole rest of my time.
Why?
When I stepped into Green Correctional Facility, the Young Guns, that is a crew from the Bronx, had control of some phones. Lion Kings might have control of some phones. But for me, like, I never wanted to get on the blood phones upstate. I wanted to get on the other phone, the Lion King phone. I wanted to get on the...
Why?
Because I didn't want no one to think I'm surviving because I'm blood. I'm surviving because of me. You know what I'm saying? And the thing about it is, like, I always felt like I wanted to get on everyone else's phone, Trinitario phone.
Just to be a problem. You're doing it intentionally.
Oh yeah, but I'm also doing it to show people, like, I'm not. If I'm this, you're also, you want to mess with me. Like, you're gonna also deal with someone who can hold him on, right?
But did your crew, did the Bloods tell you to stop doing that?
I mean, nah, they can't. Like, you know what I'm saying? They're like, they're amused. Like, you know, when I come in the dorm, they're like, they be like, yo, there's a slot open. You want that slot? And I'm like, nah, bro, I'm good. And I asked to see if I can get on the other phone, the Lion King phone and stuff like that. Yo, what's up with this? What's up with this, bro? Like, let me get a slot with you, bro. Yeah. And, you know, the Lion Kings would say, yo, man, like, you know, the Bloods got a slot. And I'll say, nah, I want a slot with y'all. You know what I'm saying? And not in a disrespectful way, or it just, for me, like, I just never wanted something to be.
It's a way to show
away.
your courage. It's a way to show you're your own man. Like, you can stand and you're ready to fight.
Oh yeah,
Did you have to fight because you did that ever? Like, you taking other people's phones?
Yeah. You do. You get into fights. You know, you get in those situations where you have to fight for those phones. Or sometimes, you know, a lot of times people learn how to bid, right? Like, I think you gotta, bidding is also knowing when to move, right? Like, when to do certain things, right? Sometimes I've seen people come in the dorm and try to, you know, like, muscle their way in and get jumped because you didn't see what exactly was going on in this dorm, right? Like, you could be a neutral and the whole dorm can jump you. Trinitarios, Bloods, and Kings. You're like, what the f just happened now?
Have you seen somebody get jumped by all different sets?
Oh yeah, it gets like that.
So they're kicking him, stomping him, punching him.
It gets like that. One of the things about it is that I seen so many stories of even people being blood, right? I remember this one guy when I was in Green Correctional Facility. You know, they went to the box, the solitary confinement. They beat up this Crip, beat him up badly. Yeah, and I found out. You know, he found out that the people he was beefing with outside got a kite. Somebody told him that they, you know, the people that he's beefing with, they're going to go kill his family. Oh, shit. And that's what happened. Literally, he was trying to get on the phone because he heard from internally that the people he was beefing with was going to send that hit out to kill his family. Mind you, he was saying multiple times without snitching, like, yo, I need to get on the phone. This is an emergency.
Yeah.
And he took his life after he found out his family was killed, man.
Oh,
and he was blood, you know, like, and it was just hurtful to hear stories like that.
So they killed his family?
Killed his family, man. Like, and this was someone who
was the beefing the Crips, or who? Do you know
just somebody he was just beefing with, and like, it's rough.
That's
like,
terrible.
I even one time, and going back into Rikers, you know, when you're waiting for the visiting floor in C-75, there's a place where you can also sit at, but it's dangerous. It's away from correctional officer. And a lot of times, some people beef is very serious, right? Like, they might have some beef that will follow them from the streets to prison.
Yeah.
And mind you, in this visiting, I remember this day, like, you know, usually introduce yourself to all the Bloods around. Yo, you know, and if you know someone, you might hang out with them, right? Like, particularly there's one guy, and this is he had problems with the Crips from his neighborhood. And I said, what's up to him? You know, the guy that something's about to happen to. I didn't know this, and none of us knew it. I left out the place, you know, where I was at, because it was a part of the visiting side. And I seen somebody else that I knew and started hanging out with them. They closed the visiting floor down and told all of us to leave. I didn't know why. Mind you, I said hi to someone, you know, said hi to another Blood. I found out that there's he went into the bathroom and they started cutting him up. Crips, taking turns with his face.
They kill him?
No, he was literally, his face was kind of hanging. And this was like, literally this, I said hi. And I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Yo, what's up? What's going on? And I say hi, you know, I said my what's up to everyone. I was literally there.
And they were doing that to him in the visiting room bathroom?
In the visiting room. Like, basically there's a part in C-75 that they had a bathroom open. I don't think it's open anymore. But it was also one side that is like kind of far away from everyone else.
Yeah.
It's like, it's dangerous to be there. You know what I'm saying? Wow. It's dangerous. It's not
a blind spot?
It's a very blind spot.
Wow.
And
that's crazy, bro.
It is. And it was so bad that he needed surgery to be able to get back to regular.
Sew his face up.
Yeah, but imagine the story you hear, like when you go back to because at that time I was back in the cell area, and I was on a side where all the Lion Kings was on. So I was cool with the Lion Kings. They was cool. And I'm hearing that, and I'm like, yo, this is rough.
Yeah.
You know, and like...
So people really get $150. That's not
really,
hype. People really get slashed at Rikers. Did that happen at all elsewhere while you were that second stretch? Did anybody else get cut?
For me, they did, not around me, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the times, like if you're $150 in someone right now, that means there's true war. There's no coming out of this. You're not just $150 anyone, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That means you're like, not you deserved it. There's real that's happening behind that.
Did if somebody gets slashed in a different dorm, do you hear about it?
Oh yeah, we hear about it ASAP. If it's someone who's in the Bloods and it's gang wise, like. If I was, example, if a Lion King would have sliced the blood and I was in a Lion King house, oh man.
Oh, damn.
Mind you, and I ate with them, you know what I'm saying? So like, I got into that, I got into the cell area because I got in a fight with the Crips and the Bloods didn't help me out.
Wow.
And mind you, this guy was like 6'5".
And you got in a fight with him?
Yeah.
How do you fight a 6'5" guy when you're 5'5"?
Listen,
whatever
man,
you are. No offense.
I'm like 5'9". No, I just swung. I knew I was gonna lose, but at the same time, I'm not gonna let someone, even on blood. This is why I differed it, right? Like just of my experience and just people who I grew up around, like I myself, but I'm blood, right? And like I just felt disrespected, right? Like at that one moment where we all knew he was Crip, right? Because he was going into Maine. And, Bloods is saying all types of slang and stuff like that. Stupid. Like I felt like people was very comfortable. Like comfortable where they at. And for me, I didn't have my sneakers on. And this is why you should always have your sneakers. I had fucking slippers on. And for me, like, I couldn't be in that dorm and let this Crip dude just say, yo, suck my... And I'm over here like, nobody's doing anything. Wow. And I'm like, I'm a swing. If I miss, boom, swung. He got me. I was like, I swung. You know what I'm saying? And I just seen everyone else and they put me on the wall and that was it.
Yeah.
Like
But somebody had to do it. He was punking the whole room out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Somebody like and to end that kind of story off, there was Bloods walking around not doing anything, and I was like, and this is not, I'm not saying all Bloods, I'm just saying particularly. And for me, like I was on the wall. I didn't have a dislike for the Bloods. I had a dislike for the people who were around me and didn't do nothing.
Did you? So you're going through. This is Rikers. Like we tell these stories to paint how stressful being in that kind of environment is. Like rarely a day goes by where your senses aren't heightened and you're in a fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how they don't even have air conditioning on the island.
Certain places of the island, they didn't have air conditioning. When I was in C-75 in certain cells they was at, they would actually bring out this big, strong fan to blow. So we call it a chair.
So if it's in August, the middle of August, like it's
Horrible.
burning up.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
So what do? You strip naked? You take your clothes
strip
off?
to the boxes,
Yeah.
because you can't strip naked because it's correctional officers who might be females.
Oh, right.
And if they see you naked, oh man, that's your ass.
Yeah.
So like a lot of times when people try to cool down, you get on the floor. The only thing that was cool was the floor. And that's disgusting because Rikers Island has roaches, rats.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's
disgusting.
old. It's a 160-year-old facility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's falling apart.
So I landed in the cells and I was like, it was a little bit more privacy, right? Because I was able to have my own cell. I was able to lock out, right? But it still followed me. Like I said, going back into like, being in a Lion King house, eating with Lion Kings and stuff like that, finding out it was a Crip in the house, I had to get him out.
Yeah.
So I went to the cafeteria to go eat, and the blood sat, all the bloods is with me. They were like, yo, blood, you gotta get him out, man. He said, yo, he Crip. And he sat down right next, they had him come and sit down right next to me to say that he's Crip. And I was like, oh, he's like, yeah, I'm Crip. And I was like, I went ASAP because the night before I told the Lion Kings like, yo, we might have a Crip in the house. And their antennas is already up. Like, we got to get him out of here.
Okay, so what happened?
I told the Lion Kings, and we waited till it was, tapped them. And, some people don't stop, right? Like, they don't stop fighting, right?
Yeah.
And cool, that's cool. I just did I needed to do, get him out of here. Basically, they got him out of there. They had us, what happens is I ran back, didn't get caught, none of that, no injuries on my hands. So what they do is correctional officers would check your hands to make sure you don't have injuries.
Gotcha.
What I would know now is that because I put the works in, now the Bloods are seeing that and they're like, yo, Blood, you need to move on this side. Come over here. The Bloods moved me from my side to the other side. Told the bubble, the CO, he want to come over here.
And they have the power like that? They can tell the CO, we want him over here, and so you can actually get moved?
I
That's
got moved.
wild.
And, being introduced to the Bloods, like, like a lot of things won't happen. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like certain dorms or certain cells won't happen, right? Like some things won't happen, right? Like some people are just comfortable and they're okay, right? Like violence don't always happen. So for me, like being on Rikers, that was my last full, like, wild out moment, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like the Bloods, it was times when, like, yo, what's going on with the time slot? Yo, Blood, you can get on this phone. And I'll be like, nah, I want to get, nah, Blood.
Yeah, they would just calm you down. Be like, none of that on this. Yeah.
Nah, because at the time who would calm me down, this guy got life and he's a big homie. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He would tell me, look, bro, I know you're full of energy, but we don't need that right now.
No, they got real problems. Yeah, I notice whenever you're around, when you're locked up, whenever you're around guys that are facing life or huge numbers, it's usually calmer because they don't have time for that petty phone politics. Like, I'm looking at the rest of my life in prison.
Yeah.
So when you finally copped out, you took a plea, was going to prison like a relief?
Oh, no. No. Green Correctional Facility is known as Rikers too. The reason why I say that, because majority of the youth who go to Green Correctional Facility are 16 years old and, 16 years old facing 7 years.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? 16 years old who's 16, like doing 7 years.
So you had 16-year-olds in adult prison?
Yeah. So Green Correctional Facility at one point had all youth, and that was like fights everywhere.
So why were you there as a 19-year-old?
I mean, because
20-year-old.
Yeah, because that's where all the youth goes. In
so you're
New York.
considered a youth still at 19, 20.
Yeah. So
it's so weird.
So what?
How it's like you get sentenced as an adult, like by the guidelines, but you're still a youth. The system's a mess. It's a mess.
Well, I stepped in, I'm 19 years old. I went to Green Correctional Facility. That is known as Gladiator School.
Oh, wow.
Literally. And mind you, when you ask me how many people are gang members, every single person was a gang member. Only one person will probably not be gang related. When SRGs, people who are investigating, correctional officers who are figuring out who is who, in Green Correctional Facility, for every dorm that was probably like 40, 50 people, 48 was gang related.
So there's gang banging all the time.
18, MS-13, Trinitalios, Bloods, YG, mad local different gangs,
Wow.
Rochester, Albany. Now you're full with not just youth who, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but you're
with
now,
serious gangs,
yeah, you are.
serious sets.
And now
So there's politics everywhere.
different. Now it can be not just Bloods beefing with each other. You can be you yourself. It can be city versus upstate.
So you're in Rikers too.
No, I love Rikers. Yeah.
No, but this is Rikers 2.0.
Oh, yeah.
This is, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. But
wow.
Supercharged.
When did you, at what point in your stretch did you decide to leave the Bloods? Or, because we're going to wrap up soon. We're going to go over to the Patreon and I want to ask you more questions about Green and like that. But when did you say like, this is enough? And what was different when you came home the second time?
Yeah. I kept landing in solitary confinement by myself.
Yeah.
You know
that does it to you.
I'm not saying anyone should come with me. I'm just saying like I felt that it was moments and fights where you like would get in a rumble or something like that, and I'll be the one in solitary confinement, right? Or
what was your longest stretch in the hole? I mean, being in there a day seems like an eternity.
Yeah. I did the stretch when I maxed out. I did 60 days in the summertime too.
So it's hot as.
So if it's a 95 outside, it's 105 where we at. And that means imagine everything is controlled in solitary confinement, right? Like, basically your showers is controlled, when you get your food, do you get your mail?
How often you get like 2 phone calls a week or
you
something?
You don't get no phone calls.
No phone calls?
No phone calls.
So it's only letters?
Only letters. So 60 days with no letters. Maybe you might have a visit and your visit might change because of classification, how long you've been in a box. But what
and
kind
how often do they ever let you out? How many showers a week do you get?
So you're supposed to get, it felt like I took more bird baths than showers.
Yeah.
Right. But you're able to get an hour outside of your, outside of your cell. But then that's like in another gate.
Yeah.
And then the gate would be smaller than the cell.
Yeah.
But what really got me into, kind of pushed me away from being in the Bloods was that I just had to think about where I was, right? Every time I kept landing in solitary confinement, it was like this movie where I kept hearing people's stories or kept meeting different people, right? And I asked myself, like, I think this was my last time. I thought this was my last time being in solitary confinement. What got me here? What's next? What am I going to do after this? And I looked at a mirror and I'm just like, yo, I cannot keep doing this, right? Like, so when you're in solitary confinement, you get to talk to other people, right? Someone right next to me was 18 years old. They're doing 7 years, and then somebody on the right from me been in the system their whole life.
Yeah.
50 years in and out.
Wow. 50 years.
50 years.
We call that life in the installment plan, you know?
Yeah. And I'm just like sitting down and saying like, wow. And this dude is been active, is, in the Bloods too.
Yeah.
Like he's getting his, he's a part of this lifestyle.
And what's that done for him? It's got him in the hole.
For me, I just kind of thought, I was like, yo, I need to change something. You know what I'm saying? And I had an opportunity to do that when, what happens is like when your big homie get kicked out the whip, what they call is like basically if a OG feels like that person, they don't like how they're leading, they can just say, hey, you got to get out my set. That means everyone that person's under has to choose someone else to be under. Or you can just say, you know what, like you had an opportunity to say, you know what, like I don't want to do any of this.
So you could just drop out with no consequences.
No, it was consequences.
Really?
Right? Like it was because
Well, you tell us, how far into your stretch did you drop out? Like before your release date?
it was 2013. I was at like kind of year and a half. But what happened was that put a target on my back, right? Because I was also in a blood facility, right? So now, I love the phones.
Yeah.
And now that now I'm trying to, I got to get on the phone at a certain time, right? So now I'm taking phones and controlling phones and saying this is a Harlem phone. So I'll get other Harlem people to be on this phone.
Right.
Or I'll get on the 3,000 phone. I'll be one of those guys that say, like, yo, can we, the 3,000 will say, hey man, you think we can make this a 3,000? Go ahead, do what y'all want.
Yeah.
I just need to get on the phone after I get on the phone.
So you didn't have any consequences for dropping out?
I didn't have any consequences, and realistically, there was this history because the Bloods had snitched on my brother, and it was that like behind people's back, like, yo, we kind of didn't do him right? Nobody was sending me anything, right? Like, nobody was coming and visiting me. Nobody was sending me any money. Like, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Nobody was checking on my family, right? And when I tell that story of the person who took their life, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was just
very little honor. Very little loyalty.
I was just very confused of what was my 10 years gonna be here.
Yeah.
And I just had to have a grips of my own life and say, yo, got to change. And I already been in the system. So through, 24, I might be 23. I was 23 at that time.
Yeah. So, and then did you get all your good time?
No. Hear this out. Playing with those phones, you play with fire. So I was doing this drug program. So you got to do a drug program when you come home in New York State, right? So I was in a drug program space. I was almost done. I was supposed to go home June 3rd. I was like a month before I was going home. And this is what happened. This is it. There was some issues. This blood dude, I thought I was cool with him, right? Like, I would give him tobacco. I was taking a nap, I was just working out, getting ready to go home. I had,
you're chilling.
Cinco de Mayo. It was Cinco de Mayo. And I was going home in June. Mad blood dudes came into the dormitory, right? And we had time slot, and that was with correctional officers. So they put the paper up to have people put their times that they're going to use the phone. And then the first thing I tell the dorm before everyone like leaves out, like, yo, y'all already know my time slot and y'all already know what time it is. You get what I'm saying? Like, somebody dropped a slip on me. It was this blood dude.
Somebody snitched on you?
He snitched on me. Dropped a slip. Basically means it was saying I was selling weapons around the campus.
Were you?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't at all.
Did you get into any kind of criminal activity up there besides messing with the phones?
Nah, not really. Like fights, going solitary confinement and stuff like that.
Do you get good time in New York State if you get sent to the hole for fighting? Do you get good? Do you lose good time?
They can challenge that, right? But for me, like,
but you didn't lose any good time that way.
I lost my good time when they found the weapon.
Okay, so what'd you have on you?
It wasn't mine. Hear this out. Like the guy put the weapon inside the can. I went to sleep because we was in a dorm. Yeah. I'm in a dorm.
Inside of the tobacco can.
Yeah, inside of the tobacco and dropped a slip. I was sleeping. I woke up and correctional officer said, search.
Oh, damn.
And I'm like, search for what? And he searched my They found a weapon in my Now, I looked, I'm like, yo, it's Cinco de Mayo. I'm supposed to go home next month. And I'm like, yo, I knew like in some way they was gonna, somebody was gonna come.
So you just got set up. Yeah. It's like out of a movie, man.
Yeah, I got set up.
So how much good time did you lose for having a weapon?
I lost my 6 months. I was supposed to go home next month.
A full 6 just for having a weapon.
And it wasn't mine.
Wow.
And I was explaining it multiple times. And what people don't understand, that because I already had a track record of going to solitary confinement.
You got a long tail on you. They weren't believing you.
They weren't.
Yeah. Wow. So what was your when you came home, how long total had you been in from the time you got arrested at 19 until the time you got out of prison?
Yeah.
How long was it?
I came home when I was 24. So
5 years or something?
Around like 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long stretch, man.
Yeah.
And a stressful one.
It's a stressful one, but it's also, it's different, right? Because I'm young.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm experiencing a lot of things that people are already dealing with at their 30s or 40, right? But for me, like, what happens, people don't understand, like, when you lose your good time, that means you're being sent to a different facility. They sent my ass 8 hours away from New York City. I was in Riverview. I can see the Canadian Bridge from when I walked the yard.
What was the name of that prison?
Riverview.
Oh, okay. So you went from Green
to Riverview.
Riverview.
So correctional facility.
Oh, and that's the worst, because now your people have to travel. They can't see you.
And it takes them all day to come and see me. And then at that time too, like, multiple times I would tell them, this is not my weapon. They did not care.
No, not from a guy like you, man.
Literally 6 months. I'm like, yo, I'm about to lose this. Can you imagine June 3rd comes and you think you dressing up and thinking you're going to go home?
Summertime.
Yeah, you
New
think
York's
you're going
about
home?
to be beautiful.
Yeah,
you're going to see those buildings.
Yo, and then you bang. and what I did, I was so bad because I was like banging on the gate. Pop, 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 pop. Yo, I'm supposed to be going home. And they're like, nah, man, you are waiting to be seen. This is a new case that I'm kind of fighting, right? So that means somebody from the public will basically hear me out. So
what do you mean?
So when you catch a new case,
they were actually charging you with a criminal case. Having a weapon is
so they were charging me with a new case, and I was telling them multiple times that's not mine. So even if I didn't get charged with a new case, they took my good time away.
Right. So, but there was a possibility that you were going to be retried. If wow, what could they have given you if they wanted to for that? Like a year?
I don't know, man. Like, it's 6 months.
So they just looked at it. The DA or whoever looked at it and said, "We'll just
take his good time." Yeah. So it was rough because at that time I was dating someone. I was like, yo, she's definitely gonna leave me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So but you finished out at Riverview, you paroled, and then you came back to the block, and like, what did you do different? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got more active in the Get Out, Stay Out program. So I started talking to people who came home just like me. What was their returning plan, right? Like, because everyone got a returning plan, right? Like, what are you gonna do? What if it doesn't work? How do you not give up? So I got introduced to a lot of people coming home, right? And so December 31st, 2014, I came home before the ball dropped.
Wow.
Literally. So I was starting a new year, a new day. And, you know, I got involved with programs, the Get Out Stay Out program. I started speaking around, speaking for them, speaking to their funders about my life. And I slowly started hearing about other campaigns like the Close Rikers campaign, not out, but releasing. I was already vocal in a Raise the Age campaign, basically raising the age for accountabilities for youth, 16 to 17, right?
And that's been successful. They don't have any youths on Rikers Island anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I was a huge part of that, using my voice. So when I joined the campaign to Close Rikers, I was still working, and I came home. I worked in the food industry. I joined this food truck called Drive Change that only hired formerly incarcerated youth returning back to society. We won a Vinny Awards for the best food truck in 2015. Oprah even was looking at our. It was a grilled cheese with maple on it.
That's on fire. Maple syrup?
Maple syrup,
damn,
dude.
bro.
Yeah.
Too much diabetes in the hood. You guys got to offer something healthier.
Oh, yeah. But I heard about the Close Rikers campaign. I got very active in it. became using my voice. And then I heard of a position open, and I got hired as an organizer. And I just, started organizing, learning about how do we actually close Rikers, organizing with former judges like Judge Lippman, who actually created this Lippman Commission that he and others who are police officers, lawyers, who play a role in the system and starting figuring out how do you actually really close Rikers.
Right. So you have a lot of support. Like there's widespread support from not just former criminals and incarcerated people, but politicians and law enforcement that say, this isn't working. We have to close this down.
And it happened because of not just because of Khalid Browder, but the outcry.
That was big though.
Yeah.
That documentary was huge in 2016.
Yeah. So when the campaign first started, it was launched with 50 people, like 50 organizations, especially being in New York. And it was launched in 2016. So I got a time to just like really be active in that space. And what a lot of the things that they were able to change is the, small things that you get locked up for, right? Like jumping a turnstile. Why are you getting locked up for jumping a turnstile? Gravity knife. Right. Things that like broken window policing.
Or Khalif Browder stole a backpack, but then he's given an unreachable bail, and now he's his life is ruined.
But the abilities of closing Rikers was very scary for a lot of people because it's like that never happened. It looks like a fantasy. Like what I used to say in my old days, like a unicorn at the end of the block. Like it doesn't happen.
Is it real? Yeah.
Yeah, is it real? So I organized. We started organizing, directly impacted people, getting organization. Lippman Commission came out, pushing at that time Mayor de Blasio. We was following him everywhere. We were following him to his house. We would follow him to Florida. We would burn.
That sounds like a parole violation.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. But hear this out. We were even Gracie Mansion. Like people didn't know. When we had. I would literally stay in front of Gracie Mansion at like 6 o'clock in the morning with a security suit, acting like I work around there, watching to see where the mayor go. Like that's how intense the campaign was, right? Like we would catch them at YMCA, we would catch them like literally that was.
What is, so what's your argument?
Yeah.
What's your argument? Is it that Rikers Island is so corrupt? It's such an old building? Because like, where are people that get arrested gonna go? Maybe you say, okay, we'll stop arresting and giving crazy bail to turnstile jumpers. But what about people that catch felonies? Where are they gonna go? Are there other jails for them to go to? And are they better? Like, what is it specifically about Rikers that is such a violation of human rights?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's like Alcatraz, right? Like Alcatraz was so away from population. To get to Rikers, you got to get to a bridge. So many human violations happen that we might not know about. Let's say if someone's getting harmed, that issue is fixed before they even, before somebody investigates what's going on.
You mean it's swept under the rug?
All the way. But it's also like, Rikers Island is built on trash, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think people understand if you ever been close to Rikers or you've been in places that are close to Rikers, people don't understand that you can smell this like eggy, rotten smell.
Yeah.
And
when it's hot out, it must smell disgusting.
And you're breathing that in. Like correctional officers are not drinking the water,
you were saying you can't drink the water on Rikers.
Yeah, good luck.
That's why you'll get sick.
You don't know what's in the water. You're like
it's built on trash.
It's
that
built
makes
on
sense.
trash. The pipe system is old. You hear about people drinking things and dying.
Yeah,
like you even correctional officers don't drink any water from here.
So you have to. Do they have a bunch of bottled water? Like, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to drink?
It's bad because we got to drink the water where we're going to drink from.
So do they give you bottled water?
No, we had to drink that water.
Oh, Jesus.
It's horrible. And one of the things is like, it was Rikers Island. They also had like, you also had a hospital there. You had power plants.
Right.
What people don't understand, like power plants are very scary and very toxic, right? And when you look at like certain neighborhood as Hunts Point and where's Nas from? Queensbridge, right? They also have a power plant over there. The study that has found that the people around there, the kids and asthma has picked up because of those power plants. And that was another factor playing on Rikers Island.
Right. So it's a cesspool up there. There's so many different industrial facilities and things around it. That makes sense.
Environmental wise, human rights wise. And it's just hard for people to come see their loved ones. And most of the times people who are in there, I never had my lawyer come see me unless he was a paid lawyer.
Right.
So the reason behind this was always like a model that been talked about, getting the city to 12 to 4 jails. So the facilities is Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens. So anyone who's incarcerated, what they're trying to do is pass a legislation to keep lowering the population by passing, making sure people don't land in Rikers, right? Turning violent programs or to remove people before they get into Rikers, right? Like you get them into programs, right? If someone jumped a turnstile, how do you get them into programs to get their life together, right? But I understand, like people who have felonies, remanding is always gonna exist. So people gotta be somewhere. But what we're saying is like the condition that exists right now is unlivable for anyone, right? Like,
I read now there's overdoses all the time.
Overdoses all the time.
People are always
taking
dying.
their life. Correctional officers not following protocols when it comes to checking on people who have mental health issues. Mental health is people getting mental health. Majority of people who are landing there have mental health problems.
Did people commit suicide while you were there?
Yeah, that happens.
They hang themselves?
That's a real thing, right? Like I remember my time when I was a youth, I seen 2 kids back to back in the same place hang themselves.
Oh, Jesus.
And it's scary, right? Because these are kids. Like if you and anyone can watch this and look at a kid. Look at a kid around your neighborhood. Maybe he's a kid. Because of fear about what they're gonna go through on Rikers. Right? And for me, like seeing that, because I when you see somebody make a rope, you know what I'm saying, and not having a conversation with someone, something's going on.
Wow.
So like a lot of time when we check in with somebody, like, and he ain't talking.
And that's how you would know like somebody was about to take their life. They just turn off and
then,
shut down.
Yeah, the CO has to press the button and they have to cut him down and stuff like that.
And you saw that.
Yeah.
Oh, and Khalif Browder, rest his soul, I believe he took his own life.
Multiple times he was already trying to take his life when he was on Rikers, right?
Yeah. So people's minds just get completely messed up from spending time in Rikers.
I mean,
you're lucky you didn't. I mean, you were bullied. Like when you went in at 16, you were essentially like bullied for a year and being jumped and getting in so many fights. It's like, you really have a strong will to be able to like survive all that.
But it's also too, it's scary because I woke up with nightmares too, like shaking and like, you know what I'm saying? Like thinking that somebody's gonna harm me, right? Like, and no matter how tough you are, like, there's a point of fear or a point where you just put the fear all in your gut and just do what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
And like me seeing that was scary, man.
So do you think once Rikers, and by the way, when was it finally, when did they finally decide to close it?
Yeah. So 2019, that was, the Littman Commission was, they was coming out with the report, right? And at that time, Mayor de Blasio wanted to come out with his like support beforehand, right? Like, mayors, they're running for different positions. They don't want themselves to look bad. We're already making him look bad. We're following him everywhere. We're going to Miami with him. You know what I'm saying? We're following him to his house in Brooklyn. We're watching.
His wife.
No. No.
Yeah.
But so it's we are making his life a living hell.
Right. So but did he give the executive order? Like, who has the power to close Rikers? Okay.
Yeah. So he actually went to city council and did a public announcement.
Wow. Okay.
Mind you, he did a public announcement in 2018, but nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you know what I'm saying? Like, just because somebody say they're going to close Rikers, that doesn't mean Rikers actually get closed. Right. He went on TV and said, we're going to close Rikers, but with what foundation? Like, what does that look like? So for a year, we literally created a built community platform that mirrors the Black Panther Party and the Young Lord's way of meeting people's basic needs. So we went to all communities that have been full of Rikers, right? This is the Greenhaven think tank, where they were a whole bunch of incarcerated OGs in the 90s that started investigating where exactly zip codes were people coming from. And we used that model, and we just started doing events in basically in all the communities that are impacted by Rikers, right? Bed-Stuy, Harlem, most of the Bronx, right? South Jamaica, Queens. And we started doing community events, going outreaching, getting political figures in this space, politicians, people in the gang culture, and figure out what do we do if Rikers get closed, right?
Right, and that is a good question. Will the overdoses stop if inmates, they don't go to Rikers, they go to the downtown jail? Like, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Probably, maybe some of it.
Everybody wanted to know, like, what exactly, what would that look like?
What do you think?
Yeah.
And then we'll wrap and go to the Patreon. What do you think will happen in 2027 when Rikers, the island, does officially close? And, people that get remanded, arrested, or fighting their cases, they go to other jails.
They will basically, if they're locked up in Manhattan, they will go to a Manhattan facility.
Right.
The reason why, just from someone who was in a gang culture, I believe that is a very important thing to do, because you can't, and this is just me speaking, because the gang culture can't rapidly grow.
Right.
Because
everybody's spread out now. They're not just in this one cesspool.
And that's what happened. A lot of the gangs and a lot of gangs on Rikers, how the blood spread out, how
the Trinitarios were born there. Yeah.
How they all spread out was because everyone went to Rikers.
That makes sense. So now you don't have as much of a breeding ground for gang activity.
But you also now have a smaller population coming in and out, right?
Right.
Now you have a bigger space, a space to have more nonprofits be active. Now you have more, like when you go to the Brooklyn facility, like you got elders who come see their loved ones and they can't even sit down, right? Like I get it, like that's unfair, right? Like these are people still awaiting trial, right? And like, it's not just about just closing the jail, it's about conditions, right? Like Manhattan Tombs programs can't fully be active there because of how structured it is. Or, I can't, if you go to Manhattan Tombs right now and someone's trying to look out the window, they can't do that.
So once Rikers is closed, you guys can focus your efforts on these others' jails.
Yeah, and I mean, that is a model that was used. This campaign has been a campaign, model that was used around the country. LA, Justice LA, when they stopped their $3.1 billion prison expansion that they was trying to do in Atlanta, where they actually used a facility that was only intaking small amount of people and closed the facility. And this was a woman and they led campaign. Then they turned that facility as a one-stop shop for everyone. So there is like different campaigns.
So there's progress.
Yeah, and in Philly, the mayor closed the facility before we even had the meeting.
Wow. So the pressure worked.
Yeah, the pressure really worked.
Starting to work.
But the part about it is that you got to be able to figure out what is landing these individuals in here.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? Like poverty, how do we address those poverty, right? Like you just can't say, hey, we need to end poverty. What does that look like, right? You know, so for me being in those spaces and having a story and experiencing all what I experienced, I use some of that teaching of what I went through in the field.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, when a lot of people ask me, yo, I can't get in tune with my youth, man. Can you come in and talk to them? You know what I'm saying? I'll go in there and set them straight. Like,
so you'll go to Rikers? Do you go to Rikers still and talk?
No, but I mean just talk about like.
Oh, okay. On the outside,
the outside, like, you know, like, because you got to remember, right? A lot of youth got to come home, right?
Yeah.
So like, for me, there's a lot of hard conversations we got to have always every year.
Yeah.
You know, we always trying to build a better world for everyone, right? And what does that look like?
Well, you're doing great work, man. And we're going to put the link in the description. They can go donate to the nonprofit. Give us one more time. Or is it a GoFundMe? Or tell them where they can donate.
So
what's the best place?
We're doing a GoFundMe for America on Trial. That's my nonprofit. If you want to donate as an individual, please reach out to me, you know, by Instagram, by my website. And, you know, I can send you a donation letter and say, hey, thank you for donating. We are looking for board members too. And, you know, whoever is out there just want to have conversations, your donations will go very far. $1, $5, $10, $100 means that we can be able to keep funding our, you know, our work, right? Helping people return back to society, building more leadership among people who are coming home.
Amen. Amen. The killer interview. That was fascinating. You stick around and do a bonus episode real quick?
Do it.
Okay, man. We got energy still. Thank you, guys. Switch over patreon.com/TheConnect Vidal, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Use my coupon code CONNECT, CONNECT, for 55% off at Scentbird. It's just a little over $7 for your first month. Unbelievable. Once again, that's promo code CONNECT at scentbird.com.
Thank you so much for sponsoring us.